where you see the checkered flag, go down to Redgate, the sweeping right-hander, which is a third gear corner. They exited at about 80 miles an hour, accelerate up into the tremendously spectacular Craner curves, and the spectators can see all the way from the Craner curves to the McLean hairpin in the top right corner, and they go through the old hairpin there at about 115 miles an hour, accelerate up to 170, down to 190 for McLean's, up to 155 on the approach to Coppice Corner, which they take at about 95, down to the S's, the fastest part of the course, about 180 miles an hour, stand on the brakes, 55 miles an hour, second gear through the S's, then they drop downhill for the Melbourne hairpin, and 165 miles an hour, down to 35 miles an hour in just a few yards, it has to be seen to be believed. A 180-degree bend corner, up to about 140, 150 miles an hour before the second gear left-hander at Goddard. And that is a 2.5-mile lap of Donington. And the Drivers' Championship at the present moment headed by Ayrton Senna, unexpectedly, I have to tell you, after a brilliant win in Brazil and a second place in South Africa. Alain Prost, who we all expected to dominate the championship, a victory in South Africa, 10 points, and a failure to finish because he went off in Brazil. Damon Hill, after only 2 Grand Prix in a car that he could do well in, this is his 5th Grand Prix altogether, 3rd equal in the championship with another British driver, Mark Blundell. And then in 5th position, Michael Schumacher, ahead of an equal 6th, Herbert and Fittipaldi. And the Constructors' Championship, well, that is very interesting, and again, totally unexpected, because equal first are McLaren and Williams with 16 points. And that's all of them for McLaren, scored by Ayrton Senna, because Michael Andretti has yet to do his 4th lap in a Grand Prix, and he has driven in 2 so far. And as you see, Ligier, who are very much reviving themselves this year, are in 3rd position, which is again unexpected. 2 British drivers, to the disgust of France, because Cyril Deroux, the new owner of Ligier, decided he was going to go for experienced talent and went there for Martin Brundle and Mark Blundell, the commentator's nightmare. And you can see that's one of the Minardi cars coming around there, assembling on the grid now with, in pole position, Alain Prost. Prost does not like the wet, the real wet, and he makes no secret about it. He says in conditions like it is now, that is to say damp and drying, he's very happy. But when he gets a real downpour, he doesn't like it. And I remember he had a lot of criticism once of the British Grand Prix in Silverstone for pulling out of the race. He said he thought it was madness to go on and retire. And Damon Hill alongside him, it's the 2nd successive race in which Williams Renault cars, and let's not forget the Renault part of the equation, Damon Hill, son of the great Graham Hill, and his mother Betty, and his 2 sisters Bridget and Samantha are here to watch him today in what could well be his first victory. And behind him, the Renault engine, some 800 horsepower, and Damon for the first time is driving in a Grand Prix car that could win a race on a circuit that he knows well. So, 2nd row of the grid, Michael Schumacher, who was delighted to beat Ayrton Senna yesterday, then the Sauber of Wendlinger, the McLaren of Andretti, 5th and 6th, the 2nd Sauber, JJ Leto, 7th, and Gerhard Berger in the 1st Ferrari, 8th. Jean Alesi in the 2nd Ferrari, 9th, with Riccardo Patrese rather well down the grid, 10th position in the Benetton. Johnny Herbert, highest in 11th position. Then Rubens Barrichello, the Brazilian driver, who has made a real mark for himself here at Donington. Only 20 years old, but a very mature young man. And so on. Thierry Boutsen, that you see there disappearing through the caption, is well down in 19th place. Mark Blundell and Martin Brundle are 21st and 22nd. They've had a lot of handling problems with the Ligier Renault, and they have not put them right. And Ferrari have had there's the McLaren of Ayrton Senna. You see the bottom right corner of your screen, just emerging from the McLaren garage. Now Senna has got a horsepower disadvantage compared with the Williams Renaults in front of him. He is pressing very hard indeed. Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales, a very welcome guest here at Donington. As far as I know, the first Grand Prix she will have seen. John Quemby of the RAC, sorry Ma, you're a racing car coming down very fast behind you, and that's Michael Schumacher, who is just motored by, little realising who he's passed, I've no doubt. And I keep looking up at the sky, and I keep seeing it getting marginally brighter. I am very optimistic, and Alain Prost will be very hopeful that it gets better. There is the 3 times world champion, the man who has won more Grand Prix and scored more Grand Prix World Championship points than anybody in the history of the sport. The first man to reach 500 points, the first man to reach 600 points, the first man to reach 700 points. And now Alain Prost driving as number 0, incidentally, because the number 1 is always traditionally carried by the world champion, the reigning world... Prost number 2, Damon Hill is 0, and the reigning world champion, of course, is Nigel Mansell, who's recovering from his crash at Phoenix. So, Alain Prost, then just slightly behind him, but still on the front row of the staggered grid, his teammate Damon Hill. Damon Hill, 32 years old. It's a lovely story about Prost. He was given the choice of whether he would be 0 or 2, and he said, who wants to be a 0? And so Damon Hill has got that figure, but I certainly wouldn't accuse him of being that in the sense of the phrase. And Damon has settled down wonderfully well. He's had enormous pressure on him. A lot of it has been resolved by his superb drive in Brazil, when he actually led the race for a long time when the safety car was out. I'm not at all sure that my confident prediction that the safety car would be out in this race is going to be realised now that the weather conditions are improving. But Damon Hill, considering the eyes in the top right corner of the screen are those of Adrian Newey, who is the chief designer of the Williams team. Michael Schumacher. And Schumacher is starting from 3rd position on the grid, just ahead of Ayrton Senna, and absolutely elated about it. He's driving, he's with Frank Durney, the Benetton technician, and the new Benetton is being driven by Schumacher and Riccardo Patrese. It has all the systems except, notably, traction control. It does not have the traction control which prevents the drivers from getting any wheel spin, and Benetton were not at all happy about that situation earlier today, because with the course practically awash with water, they wanted every help they could get. 3 times world champion Ayrton Senna, unarguably one of the greatest racing drivers of all time, driving the McLaren Ford. We've got so used to saying the McLaren Honda, but this year, of course, Ayrton Senna, 33 years old, from Sao Paulo in Brazil, which is where he won for the 2nd time his home Grand Prix 2 weeks ago, and he's driving in his 145th Grand Prix this year. Record number of pole positions, 61 of them, compared with the 23 of Alain Prost, who is in pole position today. And I don't think Senna will actually be too unhappy about the course conditions, but he will be very unhappy about his 4th place on the grid, because that is Karl Wendlinger, the Austrian, who in my opinion is as good as Michael Schumacher, but has not had the opportunity to prove it. Well, now he has, because he's in the Sauber car, and he's starting from his highest ever position on the grid, number 29, the V10 Ilmor powered Sauber. And on the side of the black monocoque there are the very significant words "Concept by Mercedes-Benz," because Mercedes, the mighty empire, is behind the scenes of the Sauber organisation. Mario Andretti, the greatest racing dad of all time, 53 years old, talking to his son Michael, who will be hoping that he does much better than he did in Brazil, where he had Gerhard Berger drive into him at colossal velocity through no fault of either driver, and in South Africa he had a clutch failure stalled at the start, only did 3 laps, came into the pits on 3 wheels, having had a collision. That's Ron Dennis bending over the rear wing at the back, the top man of McLaren, who has built this team into the mighty motor racing force that it is today. And McLaren have now won their 100th Grand Prix, only 3 behind the all-time record of Ferrari. And McLaren, of course, have been racing far less than Ferrari, who were in the first 1950 World Championship Grand Prix at Silverstone and have been in every one since. This is the second Sauber of JJ Leto, the brilliant Swedish driver who at last has got the machinery to prove his talent. There he is, an extremely likeable, cheerful chap who is very much on a high now that he's got a decent car. And the sticking plaster is, I think I just said that JJ Leto is Swedish, so before all the Finnish viewers phone in to tell me he's Finnish, I better correct myself. JJ Leto is Finnish. And there is the Austrian Gerhard Berger, probably the man with the best developed sense of humour in Grand Prix racing. His sense of humour isn't always appreciated by his victims, but he is a great chap. And he voluntarily gave up his position in McLaren after 2 or 3 seasons last year, having won the last race for them, and went to Ferrari, partly because of money, admittedly, but also because he had the chance to develop the new car. With John Barnard, who is here today, the Ferrari designer. And John Barnard, that's Jean Alesi, who looks a lot better than he did on Friday. It was a very pasty-faced, ashen Jean Alesi who sat in his car on Friday, suffering from a very heavy bout of flu. And he went off the course at great speed at Redgate, and I said I thought the active suspension had probably just jacked him off it. And John Barnard rather indignantly said to me today, you weren't to know it, but he actually got his foot trapped behind the brake and the accelerator and couldn't get it free. So apologies. Riccardo Patrese, a man who drove for Williams for so many years and achieved several victories with them, is today driving for the Benetton team. Starts from 10th position on the grid. He is the most experienced Grand Prix driver of all time. As you can see, he's driven in 242. His first Grand Prix was in 1977, driving for the Shadow team, and he's driven for quite a few since then, Riccardo Patrese, because he's driven for Brabham, Alfa Romeo, Arrows. He's with Benetton, of course. That's Ross Brawn, the chief designer in the glasses, and the impish Johnny Herbert, who, if Gerhard Berger has got the best developed sense of humour in Grand Prix racing, Johnny Herbert is not very far behind him. And he's driving the Lotus 107, which has active suspension, Ford V8 engine, and the Lotus Revival is almost complete. They have a fine designer in Chris Murphy. Peter Wright and Peter Collins are heading up the team technically and in managerial terms. They've just recruited Trevor Foster from the Jordan team. Guy Edwards looks after all their sponsorship needs, which means getting the money on which Formula One lives. And they have a very fine driver in Johnny Herbert. I've said before, and I have no hesitation in saying again, this is a world champion in the making. So Johnny Herbert is in the second position for a British driver on the grid in 11th place. Derek Warwick in the new FA14 Footwork Mugen car is 14th on the grid. The car is very new and it's still suffering from teething problems. Mark Blundell and Martin Brundle in the Ligier Renaults are well down the ladder. They're 21st and 22nd. And in the pits as ever for us is Jonathan Palmer. What's the news?
Well, I think everybody down here is on wet tyres. The tyre warmers are over them though, but the real action is down at the McLaren car of Michael Andretti. They've got a radiator leak and they're in the middle of the fastest radiator change I've ever seen. I think they will achieve it.
Well, poor Michael, he certainly seems to have the most appalling luck in terms of getting away at a Grand Prix. As I said earlier on, he had his clutch fail at the start in South Africa. He was driven into by Gerhard Berger in Brazil. Now he has a radiator leak problem. which is dreadful for him because he's starting very well up on the grid, and he was fourth fastest this morning.
Yes, in a funny way, this sort of a drama, as long as they can get it fixed in time, is just the thing he needs to relax, because of those two earlier starts this season with a dragging clutch in South Africa and the shunt in Brazil that Murray's mentioned. Michael Andretti has been under a lot of pressure here, and not pleasant pressure, because he's come over and expected to do well, and a wet start for him is not the sort of starting he's used to. Remember, in his Indy-type kart racing over in America, they have rolling starts. He's done standing starts, of course, before, but he's not as au fait with them as everybody else here. And this start is vitally important, that he gets away, gets it round the first corner and goes racing. Now, when you've got a distraction, like a problem of the car and the mechanics all panicking round, it does have the side effect of rather relaxing the driver, because it distracts you from the pure pressure and just sitting there on the grid waiting for the minutes to tick away. So Michael Andretti may just be grateful for this panic, so long as they can get it fixed.
You probably noticed that Michael Andretti had got some black tank tape across the bottom of his visor. That is literally a breath deflector to stop the warm air from his nose and the moist air from his mouth going up onto the inside of the visor. There it is. It's mighty chilly out there today, and the temperature differential between the outside of the visor and the inside can very easily create misting. And those of you who ride motorcycles will know that is a big problem, which you can overcome by lifting the visor, but then you've got a gigantic draft blowing around your eyeballs, which makes them water and makes it difficult for you to see. Alain wears a special kind of helmet which has got an air extractor on the top of it.
Yes, and you'll see there the black tape across the bottom of the visor hole. There's a little thing poking forward, and that is to hold the visor off, closing. There it is, and that is one of the ways of keeping the visor clear, and it is a big problem in these conditions. You've got a lot of physical work going on inside the driver's helmet and suit by him, a lot of huffing and puffing therefore, and steaming up visors is really, it's an art form in itself, how to keep your visor clear, and of course an essential one.
Since we came on the air, which is quite a while now, there has been no rain. The breeze is continuing to blow and to help dry out the circuit. I'm going to be very interested as they go round on the parade lap to see how close to see how dry the course is, because a good start is essential here. Any Grand Prix circuit is difficult to pass on. People say, and I'm one of them, that there are some that are exceptionally difficult, like Hungary and Monaco and Kyalami. Any Grand Prix circuit is difficult because there is only one maximum speed racing line, and Donington is actually a lot easier to pass on than most people thought it was going to be.
And Alain Prost just waiting, nothing but tension in the car, thinking about his start, trying to relax. And here we go on the lap recorded yesterday with Alain Prost around Donington Park. First corner, Redgate, third gear. And onto the apex, see the front wheels working away, sliding into the car, full power out. Now the Craner curve's taken absolutely flat out, going up through the gearbox and arriving down here at some 180 miles an hour onto the brakes, dab of the brakes through the old hairpin. Very quick right-hander, very difficult one. This is flat, right up through the gearbox, and then brakes now for McLean, down through the gearbox to fourth gear, accelerating up the hill into fifth, back down to fourth, and he turns right over the blind brow into Coppice Corner. This is the important one onto the straight. Very difficult entry because you can't see the apex as you from the turn-in point. Now onto the brakes for the second gear S's, little chicane. Boot full out, the traction control we'll hear quite a lot of today with the engines apparently misfiring. Down on the brakes, down to second gear. Hairpin, some people even possibly using first in and then away the hill again, acceleration, hard onto the brakes, down into Goddard's, which is the final corner, and there we are, completes the lap and over the start-finish line. And that's what it looks like in the dry, but it won't look like that for the first part of the race today.
Forecast for the start, well, the track is damp. Alain Prost is not worried about this sort of wet condition. We've got a camera on his car and Damon Hill's and the two Benettons and the two Ferraris and the two McLarens. So that's what the camera is looking at. So you can see that the track ahead of Prost is glistening damp on the approach to Redgate, which they will hit even from the standstill at about 140 miles an hour. So now here in Britain, the world is joining us at Donington to watch the European Grand Prix of 1993. Britain's second Grand Prix for a very, very long time, and very well deserved indeed. And no better place to have it than Donington. And you can see there's just a little wet patch there, which is on Damon Hill's approach actually. It looks pretty dry for the pole position place. The driver is allowed to decide which side of the course he wants to start. And Alain Prost has opted for the right-hander, which immediately follows at Redgate. So I was saying, forecast for the start. Well, both the Williams cars have got this vital traction control. Michael Schumacher, who is behind Alain Prost in the yellow and green Benetton, has not, but Ayrton Senna has, so I would not be at all surprised if a very determined Ayrton Senna does not attempt to surge past Schumacher as soon as the lights go to green.
Yes, I think there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm immediately behind the two Williamses at the start, because Schumacher and Senna, particularly Schumacher, feels he has points to score over Senna, over the issue of the Ford engine, amongst other things. And right behind them is Carl Wendinger, who is a notably excitable starter and always wants to do very well at the start. Now the conditions are improving. It has brightened up visibly in the last minute and a half, and cloud is lifting because we've been in very heavy cloud, which of course makes it dry much more slowly, even if it's not raining. And the situation at Donington is that the track has quite a coarse grain on the surface, which means it holds water for quite a long time and is normally a slow dryer, which in some ways puts more pressure on teams to get the timing of their stop right onto dry tyres. Because if we don't get any rain, the track will dry reasonably quickly as soon as it gets these 25 cars hammering around on wets. And JJ Leto's car is being pushed back at the moment on the grid with no JJ in it, which presumably means he's going for the spare car, which will therefore have to start from the pit road when everybody else has gone, so he'd have to go at the back. Now, funny enough, in these conditions, that isn't the biggest disaster in the world. It's not as bad as it would be if it was a dry race. There will be some overtaking in these conditions, and a well-timed pit stop could leapfrog him right past a lot of midfield runners if he's aggressive and stops early and has a little bit of a gamble on getting onto slicks early and catches them the moment they start to work. But that's a great shame for him. He's had a tremendous start to the season, though. The first race going right through, coming back to 5th place after a stop. Brazil, he was running very well, and then he had a failure towards the end of the race.
And the news is getting better all the time for people who want to see a bright, dry, exciting race, even if it's not getting better all the time for McLaren, Ford and Senna, because it's much, much brighter now, and I'm expecting the sun to come out. I'm looking at the pit entry road as I talk to you, and it looks pretty dry to me, and I bet around the far side of the circuit it probably is dry.
Trouble is, Murray, I think that bright and exciting are in conflict here for the race, because if it is bright and dry, we may well see yet another Williams demonstration. They get away well, whereas if we get the showers that have been forecast, but it was due to brighten up. And there is JJ Leto. He's in the spare car already. He will be starting, no doubt, from the pit lane. He's still in his garage. He'll be going out down to the end of the pit road. And but if we get showers, then of course I think that the race would be much more open. The Williams power advantage will be negated somewhat. Good news from McLaren in that Michael Andretti's radiator change has been completed, so he's fit and ready to go, and engines are running.
For JJ Leto, starting from 7th position on the grid, and now he's got to start from 25th position in the pit lane. 25 starters as a special dispensation being allowed to start out of the 26 entrants, and Alain Prost leads away down to Redgate. The conditions are now good enough for us to use the helicopter and let you look down at the circuit as Prost goes into Redgate. Now he goes to what used to be called Hollywood, because it used to be solid trees in those days, no longer, and the viewing is incomparably better, of course, through the Craner curves. Enormously spectacular. I hope it brightens up later so that we can see them all the way through to the old hairpin, now up to the second fastest part of the course, underneath, alongside Starkey's Bridge. They're doing about 170 miles an hour here in race conditions, up to McLean's, the right-hander, which is a 90-mile-an-hour corner, climbing up to the blind brow, which goes into Coppice, which they're approaching now.
And I can see dry patches on the road there, and that may well encourage people to come in very early indeed. A couple of laps of this, and it may well be slicks conditions. It looks quite marginal already, so it'll be interesting to see who goes for the very early pit stop. But this breeze has dried the track a lot more than one would have expected. There is a steady breeze coming across, but it's looked so damp and overcast. Now there will be a lot of brain work churning around in those cockpits now. All those drivers will be giving it maximum thought about whether and when they should be changing onto slick tyres. Rounding the Melbourne hairpin, that's the penultimate corner on the track. There is Alain Prost leading the field. He'll slow it right down now, letting the field bunch up behind him so that he doesn't have to sit too long in gear at the front of the grid. He had a little practice start there, so did Damon. And JJ Leto has done the bright thing. He has put slicks on. He has taken the gamble. He is on slicks. He's in the pit lane. He can afford to drop back for a couple of laps because he'll be last anyway while he finds out the conditions. And I think JJ Leto could have a very good race from there.
So do I. It's one of my dark horses for victory, and what an incredibly popular and innovative victory it would be, as you see Michele Alboreto rounding the left-hander at Goddard. When you see, there's the man with the green flag. When you see the red, it will be from 4 to 7 seconds before the green, and the start of the 76th lap European Grand Prix. Prost gets away well, so does Hill, so does Schumacher, and Wendlinger is coming up well. Senna is crowded out and is down to 5th position, and Wendlinger is up into 3rd place ahead of Schumacher. Brilliant start by the Austrian driver in the black Sauber. Prost leads, Hill 2nd, Wendlinger is 3rd, and Ayrton Senna is up to 4th position ahead of Schumacher and challenging Wendlinger as they go round the right-hander into the old hairpin. Senna is up to 3rd.
And after being grounded at the start, a quite brilliant couple of corners by Ayrton Senna. Tremendous stuff. He muscled his way back into the contention at Redgate. He's going inside Damon Hill. And Senna into 2nd place already. And he's giving it absolutely everything in the wet part of the race.
So now, as before, the two free rivals of that Andretti, he's done it again on the very first lap. Mario Andretti is out as he was in Brazil, as he almost was in South Africa. 3 Grand Prix and he has only done 3 full laps, and so out is Wendlinger, so
be looking for a way past his team leader Alain Prost, who doesn't like the wet and won't be in a hurry. Senna, you see, on opposite knock there out of Redgate, sliding his car. And Senna took to the wetter part of the track to get past people going down this hill here on the first lap to the old hairpin. But with the circuit drying out, Senna needs to get a really big lead if he can, because the Williams is infinitely superior. And above all, Senna wants to have enough lead that he can get his tyres changed and still be in the lead when it all settles, because then he'll feel that he may be able to hold off the Williamses because overtaking is so difficult. Now, Michael Andretti, this is the first lap replay, and we saw a tangle between Vendinger and Andretti, notably two known hard chargers, but we didn't see how it actually developed. That's second and third.
And what we haven't had a chance to tell you that is in an astounding fourth position as Rubens Barrichello, the Brazilian driver in the Jordan. And Hill goes round in second position, and Barrichello is up into third place. This is astounding. Fourth position, I'm sorry, I missed Ayrton Senna. So Senna leads, Prost second, Hill is in third place, Barrichello is in fourth position, Alesi in the Ferrari is fifth, Schumacher is in sixth position, and there goes Prost with Damon Hill tucked up behind him. Barrichello in fourth position, Alesi fifth, Schumacher sixth, Berger is seventh, Johnny Herbert is eighth, Patrese is ninth, Zanardi is 10th, Derek Warwick is 11th, and in 12th position is Fabrizio Barbazza, the Italian driver in the Minardi Ford. But Ayrton Senna at the end of the second lap had a 4-second lead over Alain Prost with the fastest lap so far, 1 minute 27.8. This is an astounding performance by the Brazilian. It's a demonstration too of the fact that the horsepower disadvantage that he has. Look at the gap!
Yes, and the point is that Senna is really showing his genius, because the Williams is just as much a better car than all the others in the wet as it is in the dry, and the lead that Senna has built up is pure Senna. He is driving with a disadvantage to both Williamses, and it's the same inspired stuff that we saw in the Brazilian Grand Prix 2 weeks ago when the track was wet and when it was damp, that Senna really flew and demoralised Damon Hill that we were looking at just then.
But just look behind Damon Hill. It's 20 years old Rubens Barrichello. This is only his third Grand Prix. He was the British... Oh, there he is. The short, sturdy, very determined and extremely bright Brazilian. And he's ahead of Jean Alesi. He's ahead of Schumacher. There is Berger. There is Johnny Herbert. Riccardo Patrese down in 9th position. Zanardi is in 10th place. And Senna is now leading by nearly 7 seconds.
Yes, and I'm fairly sure that Alain Prost is holding up his teammate Damon Hill, and that's Suzuki, spinner of the year, having yet another spin. He had umpteen spins this weekend through Thursday, Friday and Saturday. He's just adding to what's already a very large score. And I'm quite sure that Damon Hill would be able to give Ayrton Senna more of a chase than the very circumspect Alain Prost, or circumspect in these sort of conditions. But in fact the visibility is fine, and Prost is quoted as saying he doesn't mind slippery tracks, that's good fun. It's not being able to see now. There's Suzuki in the footwork, and he's just having another one. But we know what it's like in spinning, we've seen it all weekend.
Indeed we have. That's the new footwork car, and here is Ayrton Senna going through to complete the lap, and Alain Prost is not yet even in sight. There is Prost behind him in second place. Third position is Damon Hill. Barrichello holding on magnificently. We are on lap 5 of the 76th lap European Grand Prix. Barrichello, Alesi, Schumacher, Berger, who is in 7th position, Johnny Herbert 8th, coming towards us Riccardo Patrese in the Benetton 9th, and there's a bit of a battle for 10th position. It's led by number 24 Barbazza, who is followed in 11th place by Sandro Zanardi in the second of the Lotus Fords. And Senna, as James has said, is demonstrating his genius, there is no other word for it, at Donington, which is the circuit where he first drove a Formula One car in 1983 when he had a test for Williams, having become the British Formula 3 champion. And it's not going to be very long before people come in for tyres. The sun is really shining now and the wind is continuing to blow, so the circuit is drying out rapidly. It's still damp at the start and finish point, but there are many dry patches and they're going to call for slick tyres before much longer.
Yes, and that's a shot from David Hills. And back to Senna. Now Senna over the line. And the gap, 7 seconds, and Alain Prost is now holding Ayrton Senna. And Senna for sure will be thinking very, very hard about changing tyres. Probably not quite there yet. You can see the still spray coming off the tyres, and that may well that means normally it's still a little bit too wet. This is where the surface does hold the water and take a long time to dry, as I said. But I'm sure the McLaren team will be watching JJ Leto very carefully indeed and monitoring his lap times. And the moment his lap times get within about 3 seconds of Senna's on wet, they think quite sure they'll have Senna in to change the drive, because it's going to be like the track is now dry enough for Senna's brilliance in the wet to be negated, and Prost is now using the benefits of the Williams to hold Senna, and this is on board with Senna round the Melbourne hairpin, firing it away, and going down to complete the lap. Didn't go to the pit that time, past the pit entrance.
I saw the yellow line appearing under his wheels, and just for a moment I thought that Senna was diving into the pits to get new tyres, to change from wets to slicks. Certainly not the case. He's into lap 7 now, and he is 6.5 seconds ahead of Prost. The gap is starting to come down. Prost has just gone round half a second faster than Senna.
Yes, and Senna's wets, I think, are beginning to maybe get past their best and get a bit of heat into them on the drying bits of track, because his lap times, he has actually slowed down. He did the fastest lap of the race on the second race, and some people are starting to come in. That was one of the Ligiers into the pits.
It was Martin Brundle on lap 7, and that's an intelligent move. He's come in early. It may still be a bit damp in parts when he goes out, but he'll be very aware of the situation. See the plumes of steam from his cars with wheel spin as he sprints out, and Martin Brundle was well down the field, but he's going to start to improve now as past Katayama to lap him goes Ayrton Senna at the hairpin. Is the Brazilian going to come in this time?
Well, Katayama's changed on the sticks, and Ayrton Senna may have had a chance to look at Katayama's performance on the sticks, because he came in as well as Brundle just a lap before. Brundle's exit from the pits was fairly combative, I thought, but he seemed to get on all right round Redgate.
Senna coming up to Michele Alboreto in the Lola Ferrari, and on lap 8 he's under 6 seconds ahead of Prost now, and Prost for the third lap in succession has gone faster than race leader Ayrton Senna, the only McLaren left in the race, with Andretti having collided with Bendlinger on the first lap. Senna leads Prost, who is 1.6 seconds ahead of Damon Hill, who is now 7 seconds ahead of Barrichello 4th, who is 1 second ahead of Alesi in 5th position, and in 6th place is Michael Schumacher.
Well, we are now downwind of some pretty dark and low-looking cloud. So whether it's bringing rain or not, I'm not in a position to really examine it carefully, but I would imagine that the sensible teams are, and they may feel that it's worth staying out, even if the conditions do go marginally in favour of slick-tired people on the grounds that they may get rain within another 4 or 5 laps.
It's going to be a guide to watch what Martin Brundle does. He's been in and taken on slicks, and he was a couple of seconds behind Andrea De Cesaris, who is 17th. And if he starts to catch and then pass the Italian, we'll know that slicks are an advantage. Meantime, we're almost 1/8 of the way up to the race. We're on lap 9 now, and Ayrton Senna leads Alain Prost by 6.1 seconds. The gap is steady, and you can see as Prost goes round the corner that there is a very definite dry line on the Criner curves and down to the old hairpin, 115 miles an hour here. So, 6 world champions in the first 2 places, 3 of them for Ayrton Senna, 3 of them for Alain Prost, the traditional rivals who had their gigantic falling out in the McLaren team. And Martin Brundle is out. Martin Brundle, as he has been so many times recently for Benetton and for Ligier, out of the race. He's yet to finish a race for the French team.
Yes, so that's a spin, and he was on slicks, and he wasn't too quick the first lap. We didn't get a chance to see how well he was getting on, but that's a dangerous place to be parking. The marshals will, of course, move that very quickly, but that will be a big, big disappointment for Martin Brundle. He really needed a result here. He's not had a good start to the season, but then, having said that, he had a bad start to last season, got a very good season after that, so there's plenty of time for him to make amends.
And that's Rubens Barrichello in 4th position, pursued by Alesi's Ferrari and Schumacher's Benetton. Then a gap to 7th position Gerhard Berger, 8th position Johnny Herbert. Ayrton Senna is on his 10th lap out of 76. There is the Brazilian, and it looks as though Barrichello is following in the footsteps of his great Brazilian countryman Emerson Fittipaldi, double world champion, and Ayrton Senna, 3 times world champion, Nelson Piquet, 3 times world champion, and Jean Alesi seems to have shaken off the effects of the flu. The suspect Ferrari active suspension system seems to be operating well here, although he can't close up on Barrichello. But I cannot state too forcefully what a superb drive this is by the young Brazilian. It's his 3rd Grand Prix. He finished 3rd in the European Formula 3000 Championship last year, having been British Formula 3 champion. The McLaren has gone through again, so that is 10 laps completed by Ayrton Senna. And there's the battle. Now Michael Schumacher, the German in the Benetton, that's the new Benetton, and he is in 6th position, having finished 3rd in Brazil, having failed to finish in South Africa. And it looks as though Martin Brundle's car, I was going to say it looks as though the transmission is locked up, but it hasn't. I noticed the rear wheels revolving. They're pulling it off. It's on the approach to the corner. And Alesi now has got a terrific battle because he's right with Schumacher. There they are.
And that was an indication that slicks aren't the order of the day as yet, and demonstrating how slow drying this surface is, because they just went past JJ Leto, that group that we're looking at now, who is there he is in the background, and he was struggling away on his slicks still. So that will suit the people who are still on wets, because I'm sure the switched on teams will have been monitoring Leto's progress and will have spotted that it's not time to change. And with Cloud still coming in, Johnny Herbert's in, Zanardi has already been in for Lotus, so Lotus are going for the early change. And that was slow getting away. Remains to be seen if that's a good decision in the light of what we've just seen with JJ struggling, but Herbert straight out and attacking.
And on lap 11 out of 76, there is the order. Ayrton Senna just 6 seconds ahead of Alain Prost and holding the gap. Prost is 1.5 seconds ahead of his teammate Damon Hill, who is now 10 seconds ahead of Rubens Barrichello in 4th place, and he has got Alesi 5th right behind him, and he has got Schumacher 6th right behind him. You're watching Ayrton Senna going through to complete his 11th lap. He was 6.1 seconds ahead of Prost. It looks a lot less than that to me visually, but we'll soon know, and the answer is 5.6. It is less. Prost has started fastest lap of the race to Alain Prost so far, 1 minute 27.438. and that is 14 seconds slower than his pole position time, which gives you an indication of the slipperiness of the circuit. But don't underestimate Alain Prost and his experience and his determination, and the fact that the man ahead of him is his chief rival, Ayrton Senna.
Johnny Herbert went out just behind the Williamses, and it'll be interesting to see if he can hold on to them or if he too gets gobbled up by the cars on wets. The battle for fourth place will be bearing down on him, and we'll probably catch him this lap while he's still learning the circuit.
Senna ahead of the footwork of the revolving Suzuki. He's not revolving at the moment, but as James said earlier on, he's had more spins than I've had hot dinners this weekend. And Ayrton Senna is smoothly past the Japanese driver and up to complete very soon his 12th lap. No sign of him coming in at the present moment because he goes into Goddard, which is the hairpin which leads into the start and finish, the Wheatcroft straight. There is Alessandro Zanardi ahead of, he's on slicks. Now let's watch this, because behind Senna is Herbert on slicks, ahead of Senna is Zanardi on slicks, and you can see how slippery it is from the way Ayrton Senna had the back of the car step out there.
And the Williamses are much closer. Prost has closed right in and is now only 3.5 seconds behind Senna. Senna got a bit delayed in the traffic, but he's now put a couple of back markers between himself and Alain Prost. But Alain Prost is in a good position that he's going to be able to get he's one of those cars on the main straight, which of course is the easiest, pleasantest place to pass. In fact, he's having a look down the inside into Coppice, but thinks better of it. And Damon Hill right there, tracking his team leader, taking it very sensibly, in fact getting in a position to possibly look for a pass. And Damon having a look down the inside, and I think he was tempted.
There are no team orders in the Williams team. Don't think that because Alain Prost has the stature in motor racing that he has, that Hill has to defer to him. Not the case. No team orders. If Hill can get ahead of Prost and take second place and try to catch Senna, he is at perfect liberty to do so. Ayrton Senna, as we watch the battle for second place between number 2 Prost, 0 Damon Hill. Senna is reduced lead 3.4 seconds. They're now into lap 13, and Senna has pulled out another 9/10, but that is because Alain Prost and Hill are bottled up behind the inexperienced in Grand Prix terms Sandro Zanardi. He in his car number 11, the Lotus. This is only his 7th Grand Prix, and Prost must be fuming in the cockpit, and Damon Hill has a look there. Prost has got pressure. We're riding with Damon Hill now. That's Alain Prost trying to get past Zanardi as they go up to McLean's corner, the 90-mile-an-hour right-hander.
Yes, and Damon, I'm sure he was tempted as they got to the end of the straight. They're going into Coppice corner now, which takes them onto the main straight. And because Prost has held up, now Damon's in good position. He's getting a toe off Prost, and I think this time the station might be just too much for him. Yes, he's getting down the inside of Alain Prost. But no. And in the meantime, I'm just watching Johnny Herbert's lap time, and he's lapping in 1:32 in a group that's lapping just marginally quicker than that. Damon Hill right behind as Prost gets the power on in a group that's lapping just marginally quicker than that. Damon Hill right behind as Prost gets the power on. Go away. Both getting past Zanardi there.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that the conditions are absolutely marginal for slicks or wets. It's going to get a bit drier now, but it's a toss-up about which is the better to be on at the present moment. And Hill is driving a magnificent race. He's not giving in to Alain Prost. He's now confident as a result of his magnificent second place in Brazil, and he's on his home track. He knows it like the back of his hand, as Damon Hill. And he's just lapped one-tenth of a second slower than Prost, nothing in it. Ayrton Senna leading by 6.8 seconds. Prost second, Hill third, Barrichello is still fourth. Alesi is fifth, into into the pits for tyres comes Berger. 6th is Schumacher, and 7th was Berger.
Yes, well, I agree with you, Murray, that the track is very marginal whether wets or dries are appropriate. This is a long pit stop by Ferrari. Berger with an arm up, so quite what that means I don't know. And looks like he stalled the engine. He was signalling to the mechanics there to fire it up. As Senna goes through, and Herbert's lap times now come down, and a lot of cars coming in.
Berger lost 5 places on that stop. He came in 7th and left in 12th position behind Johnny Herbert, now in 11th place. Ayrton Senna coming through to complete his 15th lap, and you can see the gap between himself and Alain Prost. It was 6.8 seconds, it is 6.3 seconds. And Hill just hanging on as Derek Warwick emerges from the pits in the footwork Mugen in front of Damon Hill. Derek, with all his experience and innate decency, moves over and lets Damon Hill through, and Alain Prost, as you've just seen, has now made the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 26.9. The outright lap record in a race is still held by a sports car, actually the Peugeot of Mauro Baldi last year, 1 minute 19.3, but of course the conditions were incomparably better then. And the pole position time for Prost was just over 1 minute 10 seconds, so they're lapping now some 17 seconds outside the lap which gave Prost his pole position on the grid. There is Damon Hill in 3rd place, and he is now nearly 10 seconds ahead of the incredible Barrichello in the Jordan Hart. And a word here for Brian Hart, the man who designed, built, funded, all the rest of it, the Hart V10 engine. This is only its 3rd Grand Prix, and it's in 4th place in the hands of, obviously, a new superstar, Damon Hill. So, Hill exits the left-hander at Goddard.
And Prost, another fastest lap, and he is now catching Ayrton Senna, and Senna must be starting to think about going for dries. Incidentally, the black cloud that I mentioned earlier, a few laps ago, seems to have dispersed, and it now doesn't look as if there's any rain imminent. So it's a matter of time. There's a lazy onto slicks. He is just leaving the pits. But certainly Senna will want to have at least a cushion of at least 4 seconds if he can over Prost, and there's a back marker delaying him a little bit, maybe, in order to be sure to rejoin the race in the lead. And I would think the lap times are starting to come down now, which means, and I have a report from the pits that they look as if they're starting to take the tyre warmers off Senna's tyres. So there's Senna. No, he stayed out this time. That's Goddard's, I think. Ayrton Senna stays out for another lap. And Jonathan Palmer is in the pits talking to Martin Brundle.
Martin, we saw the aftermath of what looked like a spin. Was that a rather too brave a decision to go on to slicks early, do you think?
Yeah, I probably called a bit early. I think the track is ready for slicks, but I just on the automatic downshift, just locked the rear wheel slightly, and the engine stalled, which is a bit of a problem when it's running so cold, and I couldn't restart the engine and ended up spinning. It's a bad thing.
Very hard luck.
And Damon Hill is in the pits. Damon Hill has gone for, well, been and gone. Damon Hill onto slicks. So the first of the front runners to change, and this should, I would have thought, bring Senna in pretty sharply.
And that took Damon Hill down from 3rd position to 7th position. He may drop a few more places on this lap because although his tyres have been preheated, they have still got to get up to full race temperature, and if there's someone close behind him, that could affect the performance of his tyres. Well, there he is, and you can see that it looks as though he's made a sensible decision. We'll watch now the progress of Damon Hill in comparison with team leader Alain Prost in the Williams Renault, who is still in second place, 5 seconds, a tenth of a second less than 5 seconds actually.
Ayrton Senna in. Senna coming into the pits. So Senna is going to, the McLaren team are going to have to move it fast to get Senna out in the lead, or in front of Hill, that is, on the road. The effective lead of those who have changed tyres. And 8 seconds we have there now. And Senna goes out in second place, just ahead of Barrichello.
And Damon Hill is bearing down fast on the Brazilian, who exits the pits, as James has just said, in second place. So Alain Prost leads the European Grand Prix on lap 19. There is the new leader coming up to lap, Michele Alboreto in the Lola Ferrari, which is now being completely redesigned and rebuilt. The first design was not successful, and Prost's stop is going to be critical. The Williams team were testing themselves this morning in the pit lane, and they were actually changing all 4 wheels and tyres from stopping. And there's Barrichello, who is now in second position, and there is Senna, who is in third position, and in the background is Damon Hill. So a new Brazilian is up into the top 3, Rubens Barrichello. And I was saying the Williams team were actually changing 4 wheels and tyres in 3.5 seconds this morning, and they did it not once but 3 times. Prost is coming in. Now, is Alain Prost going to lose the lead? There is no doubt about the fact that he's coming in for tyres, because there he is. And I'm watching. I'll let you know if Ayrton Senna goes through. Ayrton Senna is going through now. He passes Alain Prost at that moment. And 7.3, not a particularly good stop. And Damon Hill is through. So there is Prost emerging, and Ayrton Senna is again in the lead of the European Grand Prix on lap 20 on slick tyres.
And Prost got away just ahead of Damon Hill, which will at least please Prost that hasn't got his teammate to have to worry about, and it will disappoint Damon Hill, who goes through there behind the Lotus of Alex Zanardi. So now that it's settled down at the front, Senna leads the European Grand Prix from Alain Prost and Damon Hill.
And Alesi is in for a second time. Whether it is tyres or a car problem, I know not. But it's Berger in for a second time. I just saw a flash of a Ferrari as it disappeared behind the wall. Gerhard Berger has obviously got a car problem. He was in 8th position. Senna going through and taking Alboreto, leading.
And slicks are definitely the order of the day. Damon Hill, new fastest lap for him. He has had the most practice on the slicks, and Senna in a real glut of traffic. And he has the added problem that, of course, he's still learning the track on these slick tyres, which means that he has to feel his way a little bit, and he can't be as aggressive as he would have been had he been on wets. But Alboreto, the grand old man, all experienced, he saw him coming. Sorry, Derek Warwick that was. I do beg your pardon. And he saw him coming, moved out of the way, let him through. And Senna will be anxious to scythe his way through this traffic. Of course, the Williamses will then be faced with finding their way past.
So Senna leads Prost by 5 seconds, with Damon Hill third ahead of Alesi. Barrichello down from 2nd to 5th position. Michael Schumacher not having a good race in the new Benetton, probably through because of the traction control problem. And Johnny Herbert is in 7th position. Mark Blundell is in 14th position. Derek Warwick is 15th. And Martin Brundle, the last British driver, of course, is out of the European Grand Prix. And what a cracking race it's turning out to be. As Prost closes up now, and it looks like Alboreto in front of him.
And Senna's made no progress through that glut of traffic. Derek Warwick let him through, but he still has the others to pass. Christian Fittipaldi is in that group, and the Williamses themselves having a little bit of trouble, and that was Alboreto. And Prost, Damon Hill is through as well. And Damon has got right up on Prost's tail and was starting to press him. And Senna is stuck behind Fittipaldi and Mark Blundell. And now it's we've got some spots of rain, and nearly everybody has changed on to dries. So if it does come down, we're going to have to see it again. Now these two are having are so busy battling it away amongst themselves that they haven't spotted Senna behind them, and this will be very frustrating. And there you saw some rain on the camera lens. Oh dear, oh dear. And Senna had a bit of a tangle there. What happened to Senna and Fittipaldi? Senna got through, and all over the place.
And Blundell off into the gravel. Senna has bullied his way through ahead of Fittipaldi. I don't mean that unkindly. He was using all his superior aggression and skill. And Mark Blundell joins his teammate Martin Brundle as a retiree in the European Grand Prix on lap 21. And Ayrton Senna leads now. Alain Prost was 5 seconds behind. Senna was held up in traffic. Prost was a bit, and the gap now is up 6.7 seconds. And Prost has gone into the pits. I'm looking now for him, the Williams.
And that'll be for rain. It's raining now at the Melbourne hairpin round the back, and I suspect he's going back onto wets. He is. Prost straight back onto wets. Now he's taking a gamble to get that advantage early, but it's not raining that hard. Now we'll have a look and see. There's going to be, and Michael Schumacher on his dry tires is off, and he's buried in gravel, and that will be the end of the race for Michael Schumacher. Now Prost has taken a gamble, but I fancy it's a good one, because the rain is now coming down. We can see it through the window here. So will Senna come in on the next lap? For sure he will have been informed of that by the McLaren pit. He'll see the rain on his visor, and I think he'll have to cover the move by Prost. On the other hand, Williams have got two people out there up front, and they can keep both situations covered, because they can keep Damon Hill out. And you see the car twitching and sliding, and Ayrton Senna is not going for tyres.
No, Senna passes the entry to the pit lane, coming up to complete his 22nd lap now. Has Prost made a brilliant tactical move, or was it a bit too soon? The McLarens are ready. Those are the McLaren mechanics, and you can see they've got the 4 tyres ready. The wets for Senna, who goes into the Craner curves now, leading Alain Prost. Hill still third, Alesi fourth, Schumacher out, Barrichello up to 5th. Johnny Herbert is in the points at 6th position, ahead of Patrese 7th and Alio 8th. And Barbazza, the highest ever he's ever been in a Grand Prix, is in 9th position.
Well, Senna's lap time was only marginally slower on that lap, and we may, well, the McLaren team, we saw them waiting with the wet weather tyres. And of course Damon Hill is now in 2nd place, because Prost has gone for tyres. Alain Prost down to 5th, but back onto wets. And still it rains, but not fantastically hard.
So Senna leading. James has just said Damon Hill is 12 seconds behind the Brazilian, and 5 seconds ahead of Alesi in 3rd position, with Barrichello a magnificent 4th place. And if the Jordan finishes in the points after the terrible season they had last year, it would be very well deserved indeed. Just their 3rd year of Grand Prix racing, and still now Hill was 12.5 seconds behind Ayrton Senna, who's now on his 25th lap, and Hill is going into the pits. So Senna is building up the lead, because now with Hill coming into the pits in 2nd position to change tyres, this is obviously going to drop the Englishman. But anyway, he had lost 4 seconds to Ayrton Senna on that previous lap.
Now, it's interesting, because Senna's lap time is still 1:26.3, and Prost has gone past, and he managed a 27, so Senna's still lapping marginally quicker than Prost. And the McLaren team at the moment, as long as he can lap as quickly as the Williams is, he can afford to stay out. It's a short lap here, and even if the rain gets a bit harder, he'll still he should still have time to be able to get in and use that lead to get out again, still in the lead. But it's a very interesting tactical battle going on now. This is pure tactics. McLaren can see that Senna is lapping as quickly as the Williams is. Every lap they will monitor the situation. Senna stays out. Remember, he did this at Spa last year and it nearly paid off. That's Riccardo Patrese in the pits going on to wets, and a lot of the people are changing on to wets now. Senna has gone past us again. We'll look at his lap time as soon as it comes up, and he is still lapping in the low 126s. He's got no traffic ahead of him either, which is an advantage. He seems to be having got past Patrese. We'll look at the Hill and Prost lap times, because of course if Senna does have to go in for wet tyres, then he'll be back very close to the clutches of the two Williams drivers. Now Prost goes past 26.5, still lapping more slowly than Ayrton Senna. Just waiting for Damon Hill to come by. Damon goes over the line now. Let's see what his lap time, well that was his out lap from the pits.
And the Ferrari is up into the top three. The Ferrari being the one driven, of course, by Jean Alesi. 20 seconds behind Ayrton Senna on lap 26, with Barrichello in third position. Alain Prost in fourth place, right behind Barrichello now. You're looking at the race between the brilliant young Brazilian and the experienced, most successful Grand Prix driver of all time, Alain Prost, who is in fourth position, jostling to take the Jordan Hart as they come down to the S's. The superior horsepower of the Renault will not be all that much of a benefit in these moist conditions, but Barrichello's maturity is quite astounding. He's holding Prost off as they sweep left. Senna has gone through, he's on lap 27, still in the low 126s.
And still this rain doesn't make up its mind, because it's only spitting with rain, well slightly more than spitting. It's absolutely marginal as to whether it's going to make the track any wetter. I think Senna now has committed himself to a policy that he has to stay out until his lap times get worse, as still Barrichello holds off Alain Prost, and this will be very good news for Ayrton Senna. And Prost, I think, has got through on getting the power down on the wet tyres there, got inside Barrichello, so Prost moves up into third place, and there is Senna, and Senna still on slicks, and still, because this rain is only really spitting down, well that looks a bit misty, that low down shot. Sliding around on the Melbourne hairpin.
28 seconds is the gap between Ayrton Senna in the lead and the new third place man Alain Prost. McLaren leads, Ferrari second, Williams third, Jordan fourth, Williams fifth, that of Damon Hill, Lotus in sixth position, Johnny Herbert. Alio, the French driver in the Larousse Lamborghini, is in seventh place, and Ayrton Senna is now on his 27th lap as we wait for the second place man to come through. What a gap there is. This is another race where Ayrton Senna is demonstrating not only his driving genius, but his tactical genius, because he's edging away from Alesi, who is now caught up in traffic. Ayrton Senna 22.6 seconds ahead, and Prost is still lapping slower than Senna, about half a second slower, so Senna has got the right tyres at the moment. He's been out on them for a long time, and of course he can stay out for the rest of the race on them if he needs to. We are on lap 28 out of 76.
Yes, of course Prost was held up on that last lap behind Barrichello, and we'll see just how quickly he can go now that he's got a clear road in front of him. That's assuming that he doesn't hit back markers, because there's traffic around, and that we know in the normal way is a big advantage to Senna. He's much braver and more skillful through the traffic than Alain Prost. However, when he's on slick tyres as opposed to Prost wets, it becomes a very different matter, and Senna has decided it's time for wets. Senna is going for the pits, decided that the rain has set. I'm quite surprised, and I thought that he was committed to this course, but he should be able to get away still in the lead.
Well, this is it. There's Senna. I'm watching the Goddard corner, and Senna is on wets again. He started on wets, went to slicks, back to wets now, and Alain Prost is still not in sight as Ayrton Senna goes into Redgate with a diminished lead, but nevertheless a lead, and Alain Prost exits the Goddard corner now as there is Prost now. So, what an incredible tactical race this is. And it's still marginal, but if Ayrton Senna comes in to take on wets after having been out on dry conditions, slick tyres with no tread as long as he was, that's an indication that'll do for me. And Prost is now held up by Derek Warwick, who is chasing Jean Alesi, who is in second position. And Prost, the gap between Alesi and Prost is only 2.8 seconds, and that's a spinner. It's Andrea De Cesaris and that's one of the Larousses. I didn't see which one it was. I suspect it's Philippe Alliot. Philippe Alliot has spun out of the race because he has stalled his car, and you're not allowed to push start these days, rightly so. So the Larousse Lamborghini is out, and Prost goes through in front of Derek Warwick.
And what's more, Alain Prost may well get a stop-go penalty because he passed under the yellow flag there. A clear pass. There were yellow flags for the incident with those two cars, the Cesaris and the Larousse, parked there. Now, whether the drivers could see or not, because they were in a gaggle, but I think Alesi may well have been guilty too. And waltzing in beautiful harmony. Whether they made contact or not, it was hard to see, but it was very elegant.
Now Prost is right up behind. Here's a replay of the spin which took out Philippe Alliot and De Cesaris there. That's De Cesaris spinning in the Tyrrell Yamaha, just missing the gravel but going onto the grass. And as you can see, the Larousse engine is now. Here is Prost. We should see Jean Alesi just in front of him. They are on lap 30 with Ayrton Senna leading by 16 seconds. So the gap has come down, and that will, of course, have been caused by Ayrton Senna's stop to take on wet rain tyres. Damon Hill is in 4th position. Barrichello is in 5th position. And Prost, as you see, is ahead of Jean Alesi now. And we'll watch the gap between Ayrton Senna and his great rival. Here he is, Alain Prost, dropping down into the second gear S's. 55 miles an hour, then up through the gears, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 165 miles an hour on the downhill approach to the Melbourne hairpin. That's a second gear, 35 mile an hour corner. Double right-hander, 90 degrees, 1, 90 degrees, 2, up into 3rd gear, 4th, 5th, about 140 miles an hour, down to second again for Goddard. Senna has gone through into his 31st lap. Is Prost closer to him or not? He's crossing the start and finish grid now, completes his lap. 14.7 seconds is the gap between Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. It is closing.
Yes, and Alesi has just dropped out. There he is in the pits. He's just gone to go onto wets. He was running on slicks. And that's a slow stop. He's being held up. There's a problem on one of the wheels, the left front. The Alesi is finally released, 14 seconds, and that's some 8 seconds or so too late. And there's Ayrton Senna now. 14.7 seconds his lead over Alain Prost, and he's got a nice little group of cars between himself and Prost, which will please him. He's had to fight his way past that group. And the rain still coming steadily down. Well, in fact, it's eased off a bit. It's eased off, and the rain may just be stopping. Some of the brollies have gone. I'll have another look at that.
And we'll have a look at Ayrton Senna. Car number 8. He's been driving in some kind of competition for 23 years now. So the gap was 14.7. Senna is now on his 32nd lap, and we wait for Alain Prost. Remembering that figure, 14.7 seconds, as Riccardo Patrese goes through. There is Prost, 11.5 seconds. And Jonathan Palmer has sent us a message to say the rain has stopped, so they will surely be coming in again for dry tyres, for slick tyres. I said at the beginning of this race it was going to be dominated by tyres. It's proved to be the case. There is Damon Hill now catching and soon to pass Derek Warwick. Hill is in third position, and Warwick in the new footwork has got the top Englishman of the day at this Grand Prix right behind him. Race order, lap 32, Senna leads, Prost second, Hill third, Barrichello fourth, John Lacey is in fifth position, and in sixth place is Johnny Herbert.
And downwind the sky is brighter, as well as the fact that the rain has ceased, for which we have to thank Jonathan. And that's Suzuki, yet another one. Well, he's still moving. And so Senna, if he'd stayed put a couple of laps, he probably would have had this race completely sewn up. But it did rain very slightly harder just as he came in, which no doubt prompted that. He had to cover the situation, and whilst his tactics were excellent, luck wasn't quite on his side there. However, it keeps the race very much alive for us, because they're all going to have to make another stop for dries unless something whistles up, but it's getting brighter by the moment. It's really quite bright now.
Well, I hope you're still with it in this confusing situation we've got, as first one driver and then another goes in for tyres, and Barrichello passes Christian Fittipaldi, and behind him is Damon Hill, so you're looking at the fourth place man. Just in front of him is Fittipaldi, who is sandwiched between the third and fourth men, because in front of Fittipaldi in the Jordan Hart is Barrichello, fifth is Lacey in the Ferrari, sixth is still Johnny Herbert, seventh is Patrese, eighth is Barbazza, ninth is Warwick, 10th is Fittipaldi, 11th is Thierry Boutsen, in spite of the fact that he's too big for the Jordan and has had gearbox problems, and in 12th position the second Lotus of Sandro Zanardi, lap 33. We're coming up to half distance, and they're going to have to go on to slicks.
Yes, and Senna must be thinking about it pretty carefully already, because the weather is really bright now, the track's drying, and Prost is already lapping in the sort of times that suggest slicks would be all right, and he's catching Senna quite quickly. The gap down to 9.5 seconds. There are dry tyres with the Williams team. Our McLaren's preparing for Senna. And Prost has gone in, Senna has stayed out, and I think Senna is covering Prost's move, and I strongly suspect that Senna will come in next time round. I'm sure that would be the right tactic anyway, not a minute too late. If anything, I thought Senna should have come in then, and a good quick stop by the Williams team, but Prost slow away. They had the car off the jacks very quickly, but he didn't make a very, very quick departure.
8.7 seconds was the gap between Senna and Prost on lap 34. Prost has come in 7.1 seconds, so the gap will have increased to some 15 seconds. But if Ayrton Senna comes in, it's going to be dependent on the McLaren mechanics, who are always good under pressure to enable their man not only to stay in front, but hopefully from their point of view to extend his lead. And here is the race leader on lap 34. Senna leads, Prost second, Barrichello is still third. We're pretty sure that Ayrton Senna is coming in. Look for the yellow line, the dotted yellow line disappearing under his wheels as he comes out of the Melbourne hairpin. He's coming up to the pits entrance now. You can see the yellow line, and he's in. Ayrton Senna is coming in, and he was leading Prost by about 15 seconds, and the Brazilian comes up to the line now, and the Prost time was 7.12 seconds at the stop. Smooth stop, up goes the car on the jacks, off come the old wet tyres, on go the new slicks which have been preheated. Alain Prost is gaining all the time. Senna is longer than Prost already, much longer, much longer. I'm looking for Prost. Prost leads. Prost has gone through in the lead on lap 35. There he is into Redgate. Alain Prost leads the European Grand Prix as Ayrton Senna emerges from the pit lane, only just ahead of the battle between Rubens Barrichello and Damon Hill for third and fourth places. And Hill is changing tyres now. So for the third time Damon Hill changes tyres, and Lacey will probably have got ahead of him. I didn't see him, to be quite honest, because I was so busy looking at Damon Hill. But anyway, Alain Prost on lap 35, which is 1 lap of half distance in the European Grand Prix, with the weather conditions looking as though they're settling, and I'm not expecting any more tyre changes now, with the leaders both on the right tyres. There is Prost coming up to Riccardo Patrese, who is in 7th position. That is Ayrton Senna behind him in 2nd position as Prost exits the S's and goes to pass Patrese on the approach to the Melbourne hairpin.
Yes, it all went wrong for Senna there. There was a big problem on the right rear wheel of his McLaren. Impossible for us to see what it is, but maybe Jonathan can suss that out down in the pits. In the meantime, Senna has got all to do. He's got to chase Prost with the car disadvantage, and his only chance of getting near him is while the track is still slippery. And Jonathan has duly sussed it out already. Jonathan, what's the problem?
Well, the problem was, James, that the right rear wheel nut got cross-threaded and of course had to be undone again, and that all took too long.
Yes, and a big disappointment, and Senna and McLaren will consider themselves, I'm sure, very unlucky that only for 1 lap did the rain come down a bit harder. Senna responded immediately, which he had to do, and had it not been for that, he would have been out on slicks all the time and have an absolutely huge lead by now, because there would have been another stop for Prost. Senna would have lost no time on the road, because immediately after that little extra bit of rain, the very next lap it was back to where we were and immediately became dry. Things on such small margins, races won and lost, but now it looks like a real problem. There's a lazy in the Ferrari in his pit.
And Prost has just speeded up. He's gone round in 1 minute 22.9, and he leads Ayrton Senna by 7 seconds and on the half-distance lap. Barrichello still magnificently 3rd, 3 seconds ahead of Damon Hill, and Damon Hill is a long way ahead of Jean Alesi, who just seen in the pits. Johnny Herbert in 6th position. Patrese is in 7th place. There is Prost. Now his lead was 6.8 seconds. Senna looks as though he's closed up a bit to me visually. 6.8, it's 6.1 now. So Senna has taken 7/10 of a second out of Prost's lead with the fastest lap of the race. 1 minute 22.545. There we are, nearly 110 miles an hour average.
Well, Senna will have to do it now while the track is still damp, because he's already at a disadvantage in these conditions to the Williams, but when it's dry there won't be anything that even his genius can do. But he's got to catch and pass Prost, and I think that is probably too tall an order, and what Senna will be praying for is more rain.
And once again, Damon Hill has caught Rubens Barrichello. He's caught him and passed him once. He's going to do it again, I think. There goes the race leader, Prost into the S's. Senna is getting visibly closer, no doubt about that. Down to the Melbourne hairpin again. And we're on the over half distance lap. That is Damon Hill. Now, where is Rubens Barrichello in relation to... There he is, as they come out of Coppice. Rubens Barrichello 3rd. Damon Hill 0 is in 4th position, challenging for 3rd place. So Frenchman leads, Brazilian 2nd, Brazilian 3rd, Englishman 4th, Englishman 5th, because Johnny Herbert is up into 5th place in the Lotus. There he is. And Damon Hill gaining on Barrichello, who of course has got roughly the same Grand Prix experience as Damon Hill, in fact the same.
And Senna and Prost, well, Prost goes by with a new fastest lap, Senna goes by with an even faster one. The times are coming down, and the gap down to just under 6 seconds.
So Alain Prost, now there you see the Williams and the Jordan respectively in 3rd and 4th places. Damon Hill into the Craner curves, closing up on the V10 Hart-powered Jordan. So, just to recap, lap 38 out of 76, which is the half-distance lap. Alain Prost is going faster and faster, but Senna has made the fastest lap of the race so far. It's down to 1 minute 27.3, 4/10 of a second faster than Alain Prost, and Senna is 5.7 seconds behind, down Now you're looking again at the battle between... Look, into the pits comes Damon Hill yet again.
It's Alan Prost in the pits. Alan Prost spotted the rain has started again, and Prost has gone straight on for tyres, didn't delay. So Prost in. Now what will Senna do? Senna, I think, stayed out. And the rain is quite heavy this time. Senna still out, but with the difficult decision to make now. Well, Prost certainly always in a big hurry to get onto wets the moment there's any sign of rain, and he came just straight in. I'm quite sure that it won't have wet the track enough to slow Senna down unduly yet, and it may be that if the track doesn't wet up quickly that Prost may ruin his wets.
But you know, the thing that is impressing me is that Prost has driven in 185 Grand Prix, Senna has driven in 144, and the man who is in third position is only in his third Grand Prix, Rubens Barrichello. And Eddie Jordan, as we watch Alain Prost completing his first lap on his newest sets of rain tyres, because he's had several before like all the others, and once again we see Michele Alboreto, and you can see from the background that the conditions are looking pretty dreadful there. Are we going to see those roosters of spray coming up from the rear and the front tyres soon, as Damon Hill turns into the S's, and Senna is leading on the 40th lap. The gap between himself and Prost as we wait there.
Teams that they only had 5 new sets of wet tyres per car, and there was nothing they could do about that. Was all they would issue. And of course McLaren could be in a stronger position because Michael Andretti's new wets, because 2 sets would have been used on Friday, leaving most teams with only 3 new sets of wets per car today. And this, quite frankly, could be a problem for the Williams team, although I'm quite sure that with Prost competing for the championship they would solve it by nicking Damon Hill's fresh wets if the situation came to it. Senna, as I say, can call on the new sets on standby, because they wear pretty heavily on this grainy surface, and even a set that's done only a few laps, as Senna stays out yet again, still lapping very quickly. Now he's getting towards a wet weather time. His lap time up to 1:26 as the track gets wetter.
The gap was 16.6 seconds, and now it is 15.9. So, all right, Prost, and the rain has eased a bit. You see, Prost took 7/10 of a second out of Senna's lead, but Senna with 16 seconds between himself and the Frenchman is still in a very, very strong position. We are now on lap 41, and we're waiting for the new third place man, because Damon Hill is up into third place ahead of Barrichello to go through. Johnny Herbert in 5th place. Riccardo Patrese is up into the points for Benetton for the first time in a Grand Prix this year. Derek Warwick is 7th. The second British driver, Babazza, he's never been up as high as he is in this European Grand Prix. He's in 8th position ahead of Brazilian Christian Fittipaldi, who is 9th. And you're watching race leader Ayrton Senna. Lap 41 out of 76. 16 seconds is the gap. Is Prost catching him? We'll soon be able to tell you.
Senna stays out for another lap, and certainly it seemed like a very early decision by Prost to come in, but the rain is still coming down, eased a bit, but it's coming down hard enough that I think Senna's going to have, well, his lap time of 1:26.3, and that is certainly competent enough. Prost won't have closed a lot. Let's see, Prost over the line, and he's closed the gap, but only by a very small amount. 15.5 seconds, just rather less than half a second there. And the McLaren pit are looking very relaxed and calm. They haven't laid out a new set of wets as yet for Senna, so it may well be. And Damon Hill is now heading for the pits, so he's moving on to wet. Both Williamses. I'm surprised that the team didn't possibly keep it covered, but Hill wasn't lapping quite as quickly as Senna, not surprisingly, on these very tricky conditions. on slick tyres. There's a good close-up of a rear wheel change, and lovely stop, and you saw him spin those rear wheels, and he got away very well. As the car hit the deck, Damon Hill had the rear wheels spinning, and that was just how it should be done.
Damon Hill gets away, and now it's interesting that there is a difference of opinion between the Williams team and the McLaren team leader Ayrton Senna. Senna, as you can see, on slicks, and he's going through yet again. 15.5 seconds was the gap between himself and Alain Prost, second position. And it's the genius of Ayrton Senna, who has this incredible facility for being able to keep going very quickly indeed on tyres that were designed for dry conditions when it is getting wet. In fact, he's pulling away from Prost. He's taken another 3 seconds out of the Frenchman. It's 18 seconds now. 43, lap 43. Senna leads, Prost second.
Yes, and Senna's got and McLaren have a bit of a problem here, because if they stop, they're going to fall behind Prost, and they know it. And they've still got the chance with tactics. But the way this has worked out, certainly with Ayrton Senna, he is far and away the most verbose user of the radio in the business, and he talks to the team the whole time. He is able to drive flat out and chat, as the top drivers can do the flat out driving bit on what we call autopilot, so they can concentrate on other things. But Senna ultimately will make the decision. He'll be speaking to Ron Dennis in the pits. He will listen, he will ask for information about who else is on slicks, how fast they're going, how quicker anybody is achieved by going onto wets. He'll be seeking out a wealth of information. He will play around with that in his head. He'll ask them to look at the weather in a way which he'll be doing as well, because all the way around the circuit he gets different angles to look at the clouds, but he'll get the team to take a view. He'll collect all that information, which he will demand if they don't offer it. And then there is Ron, and Ron just was saying something into his radio then, not necessarily to Senna. He can talk also to the team in the pits above all that noise, and on a different wavelength. But 17.7 the gap now. Senna has increased the gap, but Prost was in traffic, and this is gamble time.
Well, Prost was actually 0.3 of a second, for what it's worth, faster on that lap, and he's now 17.7 seconds on lap 44 behind Ayrton Senna, with Barrichello still third, Damon Hill still fourth, Herbert is fifth, Patrese is sixth, Warwick is seventh, Babazza is eighth. Now there is Rubens Barrichello, the man that I have been lauding to the skies, as Damon Hill goes through now, and he is 10 seconds behind Barrichello, but that's the man, Rubens Barrichello, who is the man of the race so far, in my opinion. It's only his third Grand Prix, 5 times kart champion of Brazil. He then came to Europe to drive in Formula Ford 1600, won the GM Lotus European Championship in 1990, won the British Formula 3 Championship in 1991, and all the time he was knocking on Eddie Jordan's door saying, I want to drive for you in Formula 1. Now he's doing it and making his mark.
He most certainly is. In the meantime, Senna's lap time has improved dramatically, which means that suddenly it looks as if he is on the right tyres. He leads Prost now by 20 seconds. He did a 24.1 on dries on that lap, and that means that Senna, right now, if it doesn't rain again, as he tries to lap Johnny Herbert, who's in 5th place and having another very good race after his excellent showing in Brazil, that Senna will be keen to dispense with Herbert. But I think the only thing that matters to Senna for the moment is that there's no more rain. If there's no more rain, or no more rain until after the pursuing Williamses have been forced to change back onto dries, then he'll have a very big lead, and he'll be able to play this race as he wants, going inside John, and he's very cross with Johnny Herbert for not helping him by. And Jonathan Palmer tells us of the pits that the rain is coming back again, so oh dear, the conditions changing all the time, and certainly you saw Senna there sawing away at the wheel. Let's see, well, he was held up on that lap, not a representative time.
20 seconds lead, and both Senna and Herbert have got the same Ford V8 engine in their very different motor cars, McLaren and Lotus. So if it's getting damper. I've never seen a race with as many tyre stops as this. It is, to put it mildly, extremely confusing, but Senna is still pulling away from Alain Prost. He's taken another 1.5 seconds out of the Frenchman, 21.5, and he's lapped on that lap 1.4 seconds faster than Prost. So, notwithstanding the fact that there was a bit of rain, Senna eases away. Quite amazing, because Senna has been deciding whether or not he's going to drive for McLaren this year on a race-by-race basis. As far as we know, he has still not signed a full-year contract. He decided to drive in the first race in South Africa, finished second, liked the new car, liked it even more after... This is Senna passing Johnny Herbert at the Melbourne hairpin, goes right on the inside, and you can see waving and even looking at Johnny Herbert. Move over, he's saying. What do you think you're doing? And Johnny Herbert is probably giving him a crisp Cockney answer from the Lotus cockpit, which is just as well that Senna won't be able to hear, as the gap now, well, there's Herbert going through. Senna is on his 47th lap. And I was talking about Rubens Barrichello. I'll just say a bit more about him because his performance has been so outstanding, but he was only in one season in Formula 3000. This is his third Grand Prix, and look where he is, third place. He's been in the top 6 for virtually the whole race.
Well, Senna definitely on the right tyres. He's pulled, he's going quicker and quicker, 1:23.3, getting towards the time he did when it dried out earlier, and he put up the fastest lap so far of the race. He pulled 4 seconds nearly on Alain Prost on that lap. 25.2 seconds he leads by, but he will keep the hammer down as hard as he can because he wants to build up a very big lead. He may yet, for example, if it rains again, before the Williamses go back onto slicks, remember he is still a pit stop, a tyre stop out of sync with them, and if it works wrong for him, he'll need all of that 25-second lead to get in and out of the pits and re-emerge in the lead. In fact, it's about a 20-second addition to the lap time, a good tyre stop. So he would, with a good stop, he'd get out in the lead at the moment. With any sort of hitch, as he had last time, then, and there is his pit board, P1, 29 laps to go, and the plus and the minus. And a 21:24.3, Senna's lapping in, same lap time as last time, and I'm sure that's... And I get the feeling that Prost, by his lap times, has either damaged his wets by getting on them when the track was still a bit dry, there he is, or alternatively he's getting a bit demoralised because he could surely be going quicker than that on wet tyres unless he's damaged them because of looking at the lap time of Senna. And there is the Williams pit getting slicks ready, and these will be, I'm sure, for Alain Prost first. They've seen that Senna is lapping at least 2 seconds per lap quicker than him on the slick tyres, and the time has come to change. But that, of course, will be a big relief to the Senna and the McLaren team, because by going back into sync with Senna, they will lose another 20 seconds on the road, and from there on in, all Senna will have to do was cover their moves and stay reliable to win this race.
And into the S's, Damon Hill has just gone through. He is well behind Rubens Barrichello now. He's looking good for a third place in only his third Grand Prix, which would be an incredible achievement. Ayrton Senna on lap 49 out of 76. The weather now, as it has been for the whole race, is totally unpredictable. We've been on the margins of it stopping or it starting all the time. Whichever it was doing, it was about to do the opposite. And into the pits comes Prost. So for yet another set of tyres, Alain Prost comes in, and this of course is going to disadvantage him compared with Senna, who is already on the slick tyres, the dry tyres that Alain Prost is changing to. And even if it's a good stop, and it's not all that Brazilian, and he stalled it. Alain Prost has stalled it. And this is losing the race for Alain Prost without a doubt, and it's giving Rubens Barrichello the opportunity to move up into second place. with the Frenchman stuck in the pits, his engine not running, and the mechanics trying desperately to get the starter motor onto the back of the car, and
I think he's stuck in gear. I think he stalled it with the car in gear, and without power, it may mean that he can't get it into neutral, and there's Damon Hill coming through into third place as Alain Prost finally gets going, and well, really the race is already on, and Senna goes through a lap, so Senna laps Prost as he comes out of his pit, and really Senna, who was initially unlucky in that he made the right decision first to go back onto wets, when a lap later that decision was a wrong one, but he had no way of knowing, and he lost the lead then when he got a problem with a wheel stuck. This time Prost really is self-inflicted. It was too snap a decision to go for the pits and get back onto wets, and then the mistake in the pits as well, and Prost is now lapped and out of this race, and Senna has an enormously commanding lead. So the race settles down, and we'll give you gaps to Barrichello, who's in second place. Damon Hill is in pursuit of Barrichello in third place.
so Rubens Barrichello goes from sensational to super sensational, because to move up into second position on lap 50 in his third Grand Prix is a quite incredible performance, and there is the Jordan heart of Rubens Barrichello passing and lapping Riccardo Patrese. That's how quick the young Brazilian is going. And Senna is now 1 minute and 12 seconds ahead of the man you are watching in second position, with Damon Hill in third place. Alain Prost down to fourth position after that quite appalling pit stop when he stalled his engine. Maybe it jammed in gear, but for whatever reason it lost him a gigantic amount of time. And Senna, in his terms, can almost coast home now. He's got another 25 laps to go at the end of this one, but a truly commanding lead for the man who at the beginning of this season we thought might not even be driving. You're watching Barrichello in second position, coming down to the S's, and if Barrichello finishes second, it would be a magnificent comeback, not only for the Jordan team, but a magnificent arrival for Brian Hart's V10 brand new engine, which had its first Grand Prix in South Africa.
Yes, the ironical thing, Murray, is of course that even if Senna wins this race, and if nothing goes wrong for him, he will, that quite honestly, as we see him just going through there, but the fact of the matter is he will then have quite a lead in the championship, but he still will not be favourite to win the World Championship, because the conditions have helped him in Brazil. They've certainly helped him here with his own genius as Damon Hill comes in to go back onto slicks, coming in a little bit quickly, just locking brakes there, but he stopped on his mark, so that's all right. And certainly don't want to hang around. That right rear has changed absolutely amazingly quickly, and a very good efficient stop for Damon Hill. And as I was saying, Senna still wouldn't be favourite for the World Championship, because the Williams, although the McLaren chased hard and was good in South Africa relative to the Williams in Brazil, look at all that traffic in front of Senna. And that was Barrichello, I think. There was a Jordan going slowly there. And could that have been Barrichello? And but in the dry conditions in both Brazil and here at Donington, the Williams had an enormous advantage over the McLaren, to say nothing of everybody else. So tremendous gaggle of backmark as Senna's got to work his way through, but the thing is, he does not have to hurry. No hurry for Ayrton Senna now. A massive lead of over a minute, and he's not far off lapping the whole field.
Well, he's carved his way past two of them. He's now coming up to Riccardo Patrese on his 52nd lap, and seemingly on his way to a 38th Grand Prix victory and the second in succession. So Senna leads, Barrichello in second position, Damon Hill in third place, Alain Prost a lap down in fourth position, Johnny Herbert is fifth, and Riccardo Patrese is in sixth position in the Benetton. And now you're looking at Eric Comas being caught by Ayrton Senna. There's Senna barely motoring through the field.
And incidentally, the Jordan going slowly there. Barrichello has just gone past us, sounding entirely healthy. and in second place, so that was not Barrichello.
Well, Barrichello has had 4 tyre stops already. He's currently on wets. He won't have had any less than anybody else because the conditions are exactly the same as him for all the others. But he is certainly on a very steep learning curve in this European Grand Prix at Donington and coping with it magnificently. And as an aside, if ever a circuit deserved a Grand Prix, it's Donington, not just for all the work that's been done and all the money that's been spent, but for having given us such an absolutely cracking Grand Prix here today. And that's the little Brazilian, Barrichello. You can see as he goes round the very slow left-hander at Goddard and crosses the starting grid to cross the line into his 53rd lap. 1 minute and 15 seconds behind Ayrton Senna, but he's still on wet tyres. Alain Prost is 13 seconds behind him. And Riccardo Patrese is still in 5th. Hill is still in 4th position. Johnny Herbert is still 5th. Derek Warwick is still 7th. Fabrizio Barbazza, hardly believing his luck, is 8th. Riccardo Patrese is exiting the pits in the new B193 Benetton. In the points, in 6th position for the first time this year, because Patrese's had a pretty dreadful season thus far. He failed to finish in South Africa and Brazil. Rubens Barrichello and Damon Hill passes Alain Prost. Makes no bones about it either. And remember that Alain Prost is a lap behind Ayrton Senna, so he's now a lap behind Damon Hill and dropping back all the time. So I can only suppose that Alain Prost has got some problem in the cockpit that I don't know about, because with no disrespect to Damon Hill, in only his 3rd Grand Prix, for him to catch and pass Alain Prost as conclusively as he did is an indication that something is amiss with the Frenchman or his car. And Senna is on his 54th lap now as the men you are seeing climb up the hill to complete another lap.
Yes, and Senna closing in on Rubens Barrichello, and Prost is heading for the pits. Alain Prost, so one would say that Alain Prost must have some sort of a problem because he's on the right tyres. No, maybe he's going to wets again because it looks as if it's raining. No? Oh, he maybe had a loose wheel. And that could well be the case. With all this tyre stopping. Meanwhile, new fastest lap for Ayrton Senna. As I say, closing in on Barrichello, and after which, if he passes him, he will have lapped the entire field, and you will now see Damon Hill going inside Alain Prost, and if Prost has got a loose rear wheel, bit of rear wheel steering, that would explain why he is taking it easy. So Hill in 3rd place.
Great news for British enthusiasts as you watch Damon Hill. It is that there are now 3 English drivers in the points. Damon Hill is in 3rd position, ahead of Alain Prost. Johnny Herbert in the Lotus is 5th. Derek Warwick making his return to Grand Prix racing and driving in a Grand Prix for the first time in the new footwork Mugen is in 6th position, ahead of Fabrizio Barbazza in 7th place. What a race of changing fortunes, as Barrichello is about to be lapped. Barrichello in 2nd place is about to be lapped by his countryman Ayrton Senna, and young Rubens Barrichello is already the darling of Brazil, and wherever he went in Brazil for the last Grand Prix, he was followed by didn't let him get to his head, and now he will, I'm sure, move over when he sees the distinctive shape and colours of the red and white McLaren and Ayrton Senna's yellow helmet. Well, he's not. He's going to make Senna dive round on the inside, which the race leader does, and Barrichello lets him.
Yes, and Barrichello is going to have to go to the pits very soon. He's on wet weather tyres, as you probably saw there in the car in close-up, big town and countries, and they will starting to be struggling in these conditions there. We're getting too hot, very much softer rubber compound, and of course the wide open tread, it moves around, and there he is going in. not a moment too soon, and the question is whether he'll be able to get out ahead of Damon Hill, who's just put up the fastest lap of the race. Now Damon Hill, new fastest lap, Barrichello in the pits as Hill goes past. So Hill goes up into second place.
But of course a long, long way behind Ayrton Senna, and Barrichello exits the pits in third position ahead of Alain Prost. The race order on this lap, which is lap 57, is Ayrton Senna leading. Barrichello is in third position, like Damon Hill, a lap behind Ayrton Senna. Alain Prost is in fourth place, Johnny Herbert is fifth, Derek Warwick is in sixth position, seventh is Fabrizio Barbazza, eighth is Patrese, ninth is Fittipaldi, and Warwick, Barbazza, Patrese and Fittipaldi are all 2 laps bound. Sandro Zanardi is 10th, 3 laps down. Boutsen in his first Grand Prix for Jordan. They're both running. The Jordans is in 11th place, 3 laps down. Comas is 4 laps down in 12th place, with Alboreto 13th and Andrea De Cesaris in 14th position. And Damon Hill gets a bit of a slide there. Well, Senna is coming into the pits. Ayrton Senna now he can come into the pits and take an enormous amount of time, because he is well ahead, of course, of the second place man. He's going on to wet tyres. He's gone straight through. What on earth is happening? Ayrton Senna shoots into the pit lane, stops and emerges again. He's just done the fastest lap of the race, which incidentally is an outright lap record. It's beaten the lap record outright of Mauro Baldi in the Peugeot sports car, 1 minute 19.3, and Senna's just gone round in 1:18.02. And why he went into and out of the pits, I don't know. Have you got any idea, James?
No, I can't explain that unless he came in and the team said we're not ready, stay out. But this really is most extraordinary, because he may well get penalised. I don't think you're allowed to go through the pits without stopping. Jonathan Palmer's down in the pits.
I think you're about right there, James. Senna called for wet tyres. He came in, but the team just weren't quite ready. So to save wasting his time, they sent him off for another lap. But I think he will be in on this lap.
Yes, the rain coming down heavily now, and Senna will come in this time for tyres. No, he hasn't. So I don't know what's going on. But the problem is that he could be adjudged to have gained an unfair advantage in doing that, because the pit road, there's his pit board, and he's plus 85 seconds, so he's not in a hurry from that point of view. But he put up the fastest lap of the race by doing that, because it's actually a shortcut, because coming into the pit road cuts out the Goddard's corner, shortens the thing by about 100 yards in each direction, and that may have contributed to his, it certainly is, the fact that he got past his lap then would certainly worry some people. Anyway, Senna is out, still on dries, the rain is coming down, and we expect him to be thinking at least about stopping for tyres.
Which puts me in mind of Senna's victory, contentious victory in the Japanese Grand Prix when he and Prost collided, both in McLarens. Prost retired, Senna rejoined the course but was adjudged not to have completed the distance, as a result of which he was excluded, much to his fury, having won the race, and Sandro Nannini was given the victory in the Benetton. I thought you might like to know that. Now, Ayrton Senna then is leading on lap 59 in this 76 lap race, and he surely must be coming into the... No, he's not. Ayrton Senna passes the pit exit, goes into Goddard, and if he's at a tyre disadvantage, it will be giving Damon Hill the opportunity to close up on him. But the gap was 90 seconds. Now it was 91 seconds. Ayrton Senna has gone through, so bear that figure in mind, and the gap now is 92 seconds. So whatever the conditions and whatever the reason for Senna going in and out, he has certainly not suffered for it.
Yes, well, if he gets a 10-second stop-go penalty for that transgression, he can certainly afford it. And there is Derek Warwick, who's in 6th place, having a good steady drive in the new footwork car, which certainly at least a very big improvement on the old car. Derek's pretty happy with that. He qualified well, and it's been a thoroughly encouraging weekend and being pursued there by Alain Prost. Been a very encouraging weekend for the footwork team with their new car, and for Derek Warwick, of course.
Yes, they persevered with the old car for the first two races. Derek Warwick wrote off the new car in testing, no fault of his. Something in the suspension broke at Silverstone, and Derek was very lucky to get away with several end-over-end rolls at very high speed. But now they've got the new car designed by Alan Jenkins and his colleagues, and Derek Warwick goes through. Ayrton Senna has still not gone in. And Derek Warwick, if he finishes in the points, it'll be certainly the first time this year, although he finished 7th in South Africa. Now, there is Ayrton Senna, and he is on his 61st lap.
Well, he's staying out. The track doesn't look as if it's getting wet, but maybe Jonathan, who's actually standing out in the open, can tell us if this rain is enough to wet the track again, or whether things have changed, which is why Senna's staying out.
Quicker than Damon Hill. Well, it's obviously been very frustrating for these guys to work out quite what to do. The rain has in fact stopped now, and there's no rain, not even any drizzle at the moment, and the skies look reasonably okay for the foreseeable future.
Yes, and Senna's lap times reflect that now, because they've started to come down again, and it has been a difficult race for decisions, but Senna has undoubtedly made the right ones all along, even though one of them nearly tripped him up and he got unlucky. That was more by the pit stop, but if he'd stayed out that time, he would have been ahead by even more. But anyway, he's over a lap in the lead.
But the next four are on the same lap. Damon Hill, Alain Prost, Barrichello and Johnny Herbert. And you see Damon Hill coming up to Goddard, to the top of the hill, to bare left. And Hill in second place is some 15 seconds ahead of Alain Prost, or he was anyway. And the gap of 1 minute 34, well, Hill is now going quicker than Ayrton Senna. He's reduced the gap by some 4 seconds on that lap. Don't know how significant that is, because Senna has got such an enormous lead of a lap that he can afford to take things very easily indeed. Alain Prost goes through, and he's now 18 seconds behind Damon Hill, who is holding his place and looks as though he's going to beat his team leader. And Rubens Barrichello is just 7 seconds in 4th place behind Alain Prost. And the fastest man on the track at the moment is the man you are watching, Damon Hill, who is fairly flying. He's gone round in 1 minute 20.5 compared with Ayrton Senna's fastest lap of the race of 1:18. Now there is Senna, and there is Damon Hill. Don't get too excited, because Senna is a lap ahead of Damon Hill, don't forget. And they're on lap 62. So, Damon Hill, 32 years old, just his 3rd Grand Prix. Grasped this opportunity to drive the best Grand Prix car there is, or at least that was the conventional wisdom. But at the present moment, it looks as though the McLaren is the best Grand Prix car there is, because it won in Brazil, and it looks as though it's going to win here. But don't forget that, as James mentioned earlier on, the circumstances have favoured the McLaren in Brazil, and certainly here, and to some extent in South Africa, and that from now on, when we get to the quicker circuits where the superior power of the Renault engine will pay off, Williams should get their superiority back again. Now, is Hill closing up on Senna fast enough to catch and take him? Watch for yourselves.
Yes, well, of course, the only superiority that McLaren had here and in Brazil, Murray, was Senna, because as far as the car was concerned, the Hill was comprehensively quicker in Brazil in qualifying and in the race than the McLaren, and also here at Donington in qualifying. But Senna's brilliance in the wet, and brilliance at all times and on tactics, are what have put him a lap ahead of anybody else in this race. Certainly not a car advantage, because in fact the Williams is just as much a better car in the wet as it is in the dry. Now Senna is a man who is not in any hurry at all. Damon Hill is still racing. He'd like to beat Prost. Prost is some 18 seconds behind him, so he'll want to keep pressing on. He'll want to pass Ayrton Senna, and I'm quite sure Senna will let him unlap himself. because Senna is driving now clearly for a finish. He'll want to keep a good lead, but he doesn't need that big a lead, just in case of weather again, in the case of tyre stops, because the business that he's already experienced in this race of a cross-threaded nut can happen to the very best teams, and McLaren have been absolute masters of the pit stops in the last 2 or 3 years, and that's a hiccup, but it's something that can so easily happen.
Well, Damon Hill, as you can see for yourselves, is still the fastest man on the circuit. He's lapping faster than his team leader Prost. He's lapping much faster than Ayrton Senna. Not that there's anything terribly significant about that, because as I've said earlier on, Ayrton Senna has got such a colossal lead that he can afford to take it easy, make sure he makes absolutely no mistakes, to look for his second successive Grand Prix victory. We're watching Alain Prost, and there you see in the background Rubens Barrichello, who is in third position, so in fourth position. No, I'm sorry, it's not, it's Derek Warwick, who incidentally is now 2 laps behind Ayrton Senna, and out of the 26 cars, and there is Alessandro Zanardi spinning his Lotus frantically to try and get back on the circuit. It was very lucky for him that he wasn't further onto the grass or a bit further into the corner, and off goes Fittipaldi. Now he's lost it in a big way, and has he stalled it? Watch the rear wheels. No, he hasn't. Feeds in a lot of power, spins on the grass, and manages to regain the circuit. He's a very lucky man, because it looks to me as though he is on slick tyres, and the grass of course is very, very slippery indeed. Damon Hill is ahead of Ayrton Senna and is coming up to catch and pass Thierry Boutsen, the Belgian, returning to Grand Prix racing, having driven for 2 years for the Larousse team and going very slowly. He had gearbox linkage problems in the warm-up, Boutsen, and the car doesn't fit him. Hill is ahead of Senna, but a lap behind him, if you follow me. Almost exactly a lap behind Ayrton Senna, all but for a few car lengths. And Senna can just comfortably keep Damon Hill in sight now. We're on lap 65 in this 76 lap European Grand Prix. Alain Prost is nearly 20 seconds behind Damon Hill, who looks as though he's going to beat the French triple world champion. Prost is 20 seconds ahead of Barrichello, who is well in the points. Herbert is, well, it's getting very close for fourth, because Johnny Herbert is right up behind Rubens Barrichello. The Lotus driver is cramming on the pace. He's got the Brazilian in his sights. He's going for fourth position, and Johnny Herbert's highest position so far this season is also fourth in Brazil, which equalled his previous best ever finish. And Damon Hill just inching away from a calm and relaxed Ayrton Senna, who I'm sure in the winner's interview, if he turns out to be the winner, will give his usual lucid explanation of every turn of the wheel. And Eric Comas leads Fabrizio Barbazza into the Melbourne hairpin. Comas in 11th position, Barbazza in 8th place ahead of him. You're watching Johnny Herbert now. Now where is Rubens Barrichello? There he is. Now this is the battle for fourth position. I tell a lie, that was Zanardi. And there is Johnny Herbert. And Ayrton Senna now is probably, now there is Barrichello. Well away from Johnny Herbert now. Senna leads. Almost a lap, and Senna into the pits, and he's still got plenty of time. The gap will obviously come down, but with a 1 minute and 27 second lead, which is what he had, to come in and take on another set of wet tyres. So Senna has obviously decided to play safe on slippery conditions, to take no chances at all, and with an 11.5 second gap, that will have brought the lead down to about 1 minute 15 seconds. And he eases out of the pits on preheated rain tyres with 10 laps to go. And coming up behind him is the Williams Renault. Damon Hill is second. Alain Prost is in third position. Damon Hill is now, of course, on the same lap as Ayrton Senna and much closer to the Brazilian than he was before, thanks to Ayrton Senna's pit stop, with Prost a lap behind in third position, Barrichello fourth, Herbert fifth and Warwick in sixth place.
Yeah, that's another good tactical decision by the McLaren team. They don't need to take any chances with a wet track because a set of wets will last 10 laps on a dry surface, so they've got no problem whatever happens. He can go through on those tyres without having to change again, and with the lead he's got, nobody will be able to catch him. So Senna in absolute command. This is on board with Ayrton Senna around the Melbourne hairpin, booting it away in second gear, traction control missing away as the car accelerates down into Goddard's corner, and in no hurry at all. 25 seconds, 1 minute 25 seconds to Damon Hill that was. That's not that much probably now because of his pit stop. That gap was taken just before he stopped, and now he's had a slow lap.
A full lap ahead of Alain Prost is behind him. Now let's ride with the 3 times world champion through the old hairpin. Along this Starkey Bridge on his left, 6th gear, 170 miles an hour, even on this semi-damp surface here. Down to 3rd gear for the right-hander at McLean's with the stands in front of him. Climbing up towards Coppice in 5th gear, 155 miles an hour here. Round Coppice, which has a blind entry. You have to line up the car perfectly. Down the Starkey Straight under the bridge. This is 180 miles an hour, fastest part of the course. Hard on the brakes for the S's, 2nd gear, and that is about 55 miles an hour. Now the speed builds up, 3rd gear, 4th gear, 5th gear, 165 miles an hour. Over the crest, hard on the brakes again, down into 2nd gear, 35 miles an hour. You saw the tyres almost stop there, and there's the entry. We've got a bit of a problem with pictures because of the helicopter's visibility problems up there, and you see that Ayrton Senna's lead over Damon Hill, which was 1 minute 32 seconds at its most extreme, has now come down to 68 seconds. No problem for Senna. He's on lap 69 out of 76 and really just has to keep that McLaren going for a quite astounding victory, because McLaren, there is Damon Hill, and this is of course going to be the equal of his previous best position in only 3 Grand Prix. He was 2nd in Brazil. He finished 2nd in 2 of... Out goes Derek Warwick. Oh, poor Derek. So many times he has come out of the points, and the new footwork car has not lasted the distance. Derek Warwick retires from 6th position and a certain World Championship point.
And what a shame. He said before the race that the car was good enough that if it finished he'd be in the points, and sure enough he was headed for the points, and some sort of mechanical drama right at the end of the race. Big disappointment, but at the same time both he and the team will be very encouraged. So, and Damon Hill headed for the pits, so the lead to Senna will be, it was 1 minute 10 seconds after that. A lot more now as he puts on yet another set of wet tyres. And looking like not a new set, see no labels on them, so that's interesting. So they maybe did have to use their best second-hand set. Hill out of the pits.
And as Hill exits the pits, Prost exits the entry to the start and finish straight. So Prost might well be pressing very hard indeed for a 2nd place in this European Grand Prix. Ayrton Senna leading on his 70th lap now. Hill, of course, Prost is more than unlikely to get that 2nd place because he's got to gain so much time on Hill, as a not too unhappy Derek Warwick. He looks a bit grim, but he's probably tired. It's after all the effort that he's had to put into controlling the car. This is a very technical circuit, Donington, for both the drivers and the cars, and makes very real demands on the drivers. The bit from Redgate through the Craner curves, the old hairpin, Starkey's Bridge and up to McLean's is tremendously demanding in terms of driver accuracy and concentration. Very, very quick indeed. And Ayrton Senna is on lap 76 now, climbing to complete, sorry, he's on lap 70 out of 76, and he's climbing to complete his 70th lap.
Yes, and I would be surprised if Prost makes a serious challenge to Damon Hill unless the circuit really dries more, because he is on the right rubber for these, and then Prost is in fact coming in, so Prost has gone for discretion rather than valour. And Prost into the pits, and news of another Brit, because Johnny Herbert has indulged in a quick spin, no doubt dry tyres on these wetter conditions. So Prost in, Patrese has also come into the pits, and out goes Prost again. Jonathan Palmer in the pits has Derek Warwick with him.
Derek, that looked like a superb debut for the new footwork. You're running in 5th place before you stopped. What happened there?
The car was good, you know, we read the conditions perfectly. The car was fantastic, you know, it's a shame really, it'd be nice to have brought it home in the points, but we had a gearbox failure, something's broke on the drive shaft, and lost all the drive to the car.
Thank you very much, Derek.
Okay, cheers.
Derek Warwick walks away. They'll know what to do next time for the next Grand Prix, the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola in 2 weeks' time. Now, this is Damon Hill coming up in 2nd place, and Johnny Herbert's spin. This is it. This is the Englishman going off on the Lotus, and he caught it beautifully. Managed to keep. This is always the problem, of course. You can so very easily, going from one gear to another, lose the edge. Oh, and he just overdoes it on the slippery conditions, but manages to keep the Lotus pointing straight in the end, and does not lose his 5th position. As we watch now, Alain Prost, winner in South Africa, retired in Brazil, looks as though he's going to be 3rd in the European Grand Prix at Donington, and the people who chanced the weather to come here have certainly seen a nail-bitingly exciting and unpredictable race with more tyre changes than I have ever seen in a Grand Prix before. Senna now is on his 72nd lap, 5 to go, including the one that he is on, with a maintained commanding lead. It enables me to point out again those side panels on the McLaren, which is a McLaren innovation which has been introduced at the same time by Benetton. McLaren would probably say that Benetton copied them, and Benetton would probably say that they were working on them anyway. But the object of the exercise is to smooth out the airflow around the sides of the car. You see them there. Smooth out the airflow around the sides of the car and increase the downforce, because there are new regulations in 1993 in terms of the wing sizes designed to reduce the downforce, and the technicians, as ever, have been working to overcome the regulations. And Senna is now on his 72nd lap, 1 minute and 28 seconds ahead of Damon Hill, and in 3rd position is Barrichello. He's back there again, ahead of Alain Prost, who looks as though he's not even going to finish on the podium. And we have the prospect of a winner being a 33-year-old Brazilian, Ayrton Senna, coming up to lap Michele Alboreto yet again in the Lola. Michele Alboreto said the understeer on the Lola is so terrible that I hope I don't get called into the pits, because I probably won't be able to turn into the pit lane. And it's understood that Eric Broadley, the boss of Lola, has given instructions that the car should be completely redesigned and an entirely new one produced to replace the existing design. And out goes Barrichello. That is Rubens Barrichello. What a bitter blow for him. My goodness, only 4 laps from the end of the race, with the prospect of finishing 2nd to one of the greatest drivers of all time, Ayrton Senna, and he is out of the race. Now, whether he spun out or whether he had some sort of a mechanical problem, I know not. It won't matter a lot to Barrichello. All that concerns him is that he is out of the race, and now...
And Well, I'm just looking. Well, he was on wet tyres, and Barrichello, well, he'd be very disappointed with that after all that hard work.
Indeed he will. So Fabio Barbazza goes out. You see, if you get the tyre decisions wrong, he was in 7th position, but he's managed to keep the car going. He shouldn't have lost anything because his teammate Fittipaldi was a lap behind him in 8th position, so it looks as though Barbazza is going to retain his place. Into lap 74 now, only 2 to go at the end of this one. Ayrton Senna and Damon Hill on the same lap, a lap ahead of Alain Prost, with Johnny Herbert up into 3rd place, now 4th place now that Barrichello is out, and Riccardo Patrese up into 5th position, and it looks as though Barbazza is going to finish in.
Just had a huge moment over Zanardi. It looked like the suspension collapsed on the car. It seemed to plunge the nose in, the most extraordinary thing. And there's mud coming off the bottom, or maybe he just picked that up. He got off the circuit, doing a sort of slow snowplow there. Damon Hill in comfortable 2nd place, Senna leading, Hill 2nd, Prost 3rd, and Johnny Herbert up to 4th place. Now that Barrichello is out, Riccardo Patrese is in 5th, and Herbert's spin didn't cause him any loss of pace at all.
We are on lap 74, we being Ayrton Senna and his McLaren, and we're watching Johnny Herbert, who is in 4th position, which will equal his best previous finish if he stays there, with Damon Hill in 2nd place on the same lap as Ayrton Senna, a lap ahead of Alain Prost in 3rd position, who is on the same lap as Johnny Herbert that we are looking at in 4th position. 5th is Riccardo Patrese, 6th is Barbazza, 7th was Barrichello, but is out of the race, which means to say that Fittipaldi moves up 1 place behind his teammate. It's going to be a good finish for Minardi. 8th will be Zanardi in the 2nd Lotus, 9th will be Comas, and 10th will be Michele Alboreto if he finishes the race, and he's showing every sign of doing so, soldiering on to get some mileage into the Lola. And soon Ayrton Senna, who is now on his 75th lap, will be coming up to complete it and start his 76th and potentially victorious lap with only 2.5 miles to go after one of the best tactical drives I have ever seen. Both he and his McLaren teammates have read the race perfectly, made the right judgments about when to come in for tyre changes. They always seem to be 1 step ahead of the Williams team of Alain Prost and Damon Hill in that respect, and Senna is now on his 76th and last lap into Redgate. So if Senna finishes this last 2.5 miles, it will be for his yet another Grand Prix win, his 38th. Incredible.
Yes, and the rain is really tipping down now, but that won't worry Ayrton Senna. He's got the big chunky wet weather tyres on, and he's in absolutely no hurry at all. Has an enormous lead. Damon Hill, remember, in a fine 2nd place, driven a very good and steady race at the least, and a pretty quick race at the best of times, and has shown a very, very promising turn of speed. Alain Prost in 3rd place. Now look at that rain. There's Johnny Herbert ahead of him in a fine 4th place.
Well, Senna out of the S's. He's just got to go down to the Melbourne hairpin, into the S's shortly, I'm sorry, and then he's almost home for yet another Grand Prix victory, and it will have pleased him more than anything else, I think, that he's beaten his arch rival Alain Prost in what Senna regards as superior equipment in terms of the Williams car and the Renault engine. But Damon Hill, 2nd for Williams. So here is Ayrton Senna across the line, and it is victory for the Brazilian for the 38th time The conditions may have deteriorated, but it was in conditions like this that Ayrton Senna won his first Grand Prix for Lotus in Portugal in 1985. I've done it, he says. Out comes the fist of victory, and Senna has got another 10 World Championship points.
And a really masterly race from Ayrton Senna. He won that entirely by his own individual brilliance, and the timing of the stops, his master tactical things. He's looking for the Brazilian flag, I'm quite sure. He's trying to get the marshals to bring it over the fence from the crowd. He wants to wave the Brazilian flag. There was a time, but not too long ago, when Peter said no driver can wave his national flag on the slowing down. That will fine anybody who does, but that rule thankfully has been forgotten. But, and there is David Hill coming down to the Melbourne hairpin. It will be his last lap, and that will be for fine second place and 6 points. Did have a flag, but he lost it. But, no, the rest of the section's got it, so that's fine. And Alan. Well, Damon Hill still just out at the last corner, over the line for second place and 6 points. 2 second places on the trot for Damon Hill, and he has every reason to be delighted with that result. He drove a very sensible race. He deserved in every way to beat his teammate Alan Prost. His tactics were sensible and solid at all times, and shows a lot of promise for the future. But Ayrton Senna, without a doubt, the man of the race. He took the McLaren by the scruff of the neck in the conditions. Was well known as Alain Prost, coming through the S's into Melbourne hairpin on his way to a relatively distant third place. There's some misunderstanding there, because I think Johnny Herbert thinks that he didn't have to do another lap, but he was ahead of Ayrton Senna going over the line, so he hasn't finished his race yet. He needs to go on up. And Alain Prost is coming into the pits. Well, everybody seems to assume that maybe the marshals are sending the cars into the pits, but Prost didn't complete his lap, and Herbert would be yet to complete a lap, and I saw Zanardi coming in.
Well, the official result seems to be that Ayrton Senna, as we watch Johnny Herbert in 4th position, Ayrton Senna wins the European Grand Prix at Donington, the first Grand Prix here since 1938, held in very different circumstances and with very different motor cars, but a magnificent win for Ayrton Senna, which increases his points gap from his points in the World Championship from 16 to 26. Alain Prost is now on 14 points, and Damon Hill is only 2 points behind his team leader. But McLaren and Ayrton Senna are certainly much further ahead in the World Championship for drivers than they would have expected to be at the beginning of the season, and it's a testimony to their dedication and the achievements of their work people that Senna has been able to win these last 2 races. So, victory for Senna, a second successive second place for Damon Hill, with Alain Prost down in 3rd position behind his teammate. Johnny Herbert finishes in 4th place to equal his previous best for Lotus. 5th, Riccardo Patrese, his first time in the points this season. In 6th position, the first time he's finished in the points, Fabrizio Barbazza, the Italian, in the Minardi, and that's the second Minardi points finish this year. Ahead of his teammate Fittipaldi in 7th place, Zanardi in 8th place, Eric Comas in 9th position, 10th Rubens Barrichello, albeit 6 laps down, 11th Alboreto, 6 laps down. The fastest lap in the race was that of Ayrton Senna on lap 57, 1 minute 18.029, but as Damon Hill comes in, Donington has made its mark.
Yes, it certainly has, and I think the weather was a tremendous part of this race. It really livened it up, and it is now's the Constructors' Championship. McLaren and Williams level on 26 points. Lotus in 3rd place on 7 points. But certainly Senna will be under no delusions about his World Championship lead of some 12 points over Alain Prost. because the Williams cars in qualifying, both in dry conditions in both Sao Paulo and here at Donington, had a clear 2 seconds really of advantage over Senna's McLaren, and it's not going to rain at every Grand Prix this year, and right now Senna will be looking to McLaren to improve their car, looking to Ford to give them their best of their Cosworth engines instead of the one without the air valves, which they currently are confined to, in order to try and improve his challenge for the World Championship, because Imola is next. That is a power circuit. Williams have a huge power advantage, and if it's dry, I think McLaren will be struggling to stay on the same lap as Williams on their present form. So Senna leads the championship, and mightily pleased he is. That's Joe Ramirez, senior member of the McLaren team and an old faithful who loves his motor racing. And Ayrton Senna mounting the steps to the rostrum.
And you can see what the adrenaline of success does. Ayrton Senna fairly bounds up the steps, his face in a terrific grin, to win 2 Grand Prix in succession in such dreadful conditions. First of all in Brazil, and now here is testimony to his genius. Quick word from Bob Constanduros there. So we look ahead to the next Grand Prix now. As James has just said, it's in 2 weeks' time. It's at Imola, the San Marino Grand Prix. It's Tom Wheatcroft, the circuit owner, who distinguished himself this morning by putting the W154 1938 Mercedes-Benz into the gravel trap, out of which it had to be dragged. But this has made 72-year-old Tom Wheatcroft's day. He's lived for the time there would be a Grand Prix at Donington. He has fought tremendously hard for it, and there he is to share in the happiness with Ayrton Senna, the winner. Damon Hill, second place. Alain Prost, third.
And now for the winning
national anthem of Brazil for Ayrton Senna, who has, as ever, finds himself a Brazilian flag. The Constructors' Championship, the national anthem, and the Constructors' Championship now jointly led by Williams and McLaren, as it was when this race began. They were on 16 points then, and they've now increased their points to 26 each of them. Tom Wheatcroft congratulates Ayrton Senna, and I don't know quite what it's the sponsors trophy, and funnily enough it's the sponsor of the Williams team who also sponsored the Grand Prix itself, as Ayrton Senna holds up the symbol. And now the trophy, and you can see the rain absolutely belting down now, as it did in Brazil, and it has been tyres, weather and tactics that dominated and made the European Grand Prix what it has been. And it was the superior tactics in the end of Senna and McLaren that won it. From Damon Hill, second, Alain Prost, a very happy Ron Dennis, the boss of McLaren, with the Constructors' Trophy. Damon Hill, the trophy for second position, to add to those that he has at home, and remembering that his father Graham had an absolutely enormous collection of trophies as a result of his success.
And now, gentlemen, the champagne.
Oh well, this is it. You can never get away from it. The champagne spraying, and everybody gets soaked. The overalls go to the laundry. So often the drivers end up with the bubbly in their eyes, as Ayrton Senna did then. But who would worry if you've just got it in the eyes as a result of having won the European Grand Prix? And Damon Hill gets his comeuppance now. Well, Donington has established itself on the Grand Prix map. Let us hope that the powers that be decide that everything that has happened here today, yesterday in practice, Friday and Thursday, has justified Donington earning its position on the Grand Prix calendar permanently and being here next year for us to return to. There's been a lot of criticism from some people about holding a Grand Prix at this time of the year in Britain when conditions can be so cold, demanding and miserable. And this is a replay of Ayrton Senna on his final victory lap, and you can see his elation as he sits in the cockpit there. Well, and let us not forget either that this has been a wonderful race not just for Senna and McLaren but also for Ford, because Ford engined cars have now won in Brazil and at the European Grand Prix at Donington. They share the lead with the Renault powered Williams, and there is no secret about the fact that the Williams engine has got far more horsepower than the Ford, and it's going to heighten Ayrton Senna's political pressure on Ford and the McLaren political pressure on Ford for the McLaren team to be given the engine with the specification that matches that of the more powerful Benetton Ford version. Well, did they think it was worth it with the umbrellas? They must have thought it was worth it. Just one place better would have satisfied them according to the banner, but Damon Hill in second place must have given a lot of joy to so many spectators here who have braved the elements to come to Donington to see the first Grand Prix here for so very long. Just to recap, Ayrton Senna the winner, with only Damon Hill completing the race distance, Alain Prost third, ahead of Herbert, Patrese and Babazza. And waiting to talk to the top three men, Jonathan Palmer.
Ayrton, congratulations first of all on a brilliant victory. Conditions were certainly extremely difficult, but you seem to make the best of them.
Of course, conditions were difficult. I don't know how many times we stopped for tires. I think it's surely the record in any race of pit stops. Driving with slicks in damp and really slippery conditions was tremendous effort, because you just don't get the feeling from the car, and you have to commit yourself to certain corners, and you just can be off. So I had to gamble on this in some occasions, because on wet tires my car was a bit funny with low water in the circuit. When there was a lot of water it was okay, but with just light water or damp on wet tires my car was not working well. So I had to gamble on the slicks even on damp conditions, and it paid off, and of course I'm over the moon with the result, and I don't know what to say. I'd like to thank you all the marshals and the people who helped organize this Grand Prix. Donington is a place where I first drove my Formula 1 car, my whole career, back in '83. Was a Williams then, and now I won with the McLaren, so I'm over the moon. Thank you to everyone, and thank you.
Clearly it was a race in which decisions for tyre changes were absolutely vital. Who made those decisions? Was it you or the team, or a combination?
Sometimes the team pushed me hard to change tires, and I insist on my own mind, and eventually I came in, and sometimes I think they told me to come and I didn't come, and then I told them I was coming and they weren't ready, so I had to go through. And conditions like this is gambling, and it's taking chances that pays off. And I think we gambled good and we got the result, and the mechanics did superb work for us. They changed our alternator this morning to the afternoon. They made the improvisation because wasn't enough time to change it, so they had to make a new wire going outside the car to connect the new alternators. You know, it creativity in those moments. It wins a race like this, and was not only mine but the team too.
Had you got the best car in the conditions, do you think, today?
Well, you know what driving is like. You've been there. I think I had a good car. I don't know whether it was the best, but I had a good car.
Damon, moving on to you. You must be absolutely delighted. Another marvellous second place in very challenging conditions too. How was the race for you?
It was a nightmare. I mean, I have to say it was the worst race you'd ever want to be in because you just didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, you could see the clouds in one part of the circuit, you see umbrellas up in one part of the circuit, another part it was dry. And obviously it just never made his mind up. And I want to thank, I think a special thanks to the Williams pit crew because I came into the pit lane, locked up a few times, and they just stayed in their places like good soldiers. They were brilliant. And it was such a difficult race. A lot of conversation on the radio, and it's very difficult to break your concentration to talk on the radio. But I'm very, very pleased. I mean, I don't know how I came second because I didn't know where I was for a lot of the race.
Again, on that question of tyre change decisions, Alain and Ayrton have got vast amount more experience than you have and a better place to make those decisions themselves. Were you relying more on the team to give you direction?
Yeah, I have to say I've still got a lot to learn about Grand Prix racing. I mean, the races are so long, that's the difference, and every decision is very, very crucial. But it was impossible really to make the right decision today. I mean, if you'd stayed on slicks, you could probably have gone through the whole race on slicks. Well, apart from the first 20 laps, but you'd have been really touch and go for some of the periods when it was spitting. But then it only was like that for like 10 laps, and then you could have gone back to slicks again. So difficult.
It seemed that in those first 15 laps you were pushing Alain very hard. Could you have got by him?
Well, it was in the early part. It was obviously difficult to push that hard. I mean, we're still feeling the conditions, and very difficult on a circuit like this to get close. And Alan was pushing quite hard as well. So I think it would have been difficult and risky, which wasn't really the right time to make risky decisions like that.
Alain, moving on to you, third place. Conditions that you don't particularly enjoy, we know this, but you were very much in the hunt for the lead until you had a particularly long pit stop, I think.
Yes, I mean, it would be very long to tell everything that happened for me in the race, but mainly I've done some good decision to stop for the tires, especially at the beginning. Car was handling not bad at all in the wet tires, but I've stolen the engine. My clutch was coming to be, difficult, and I've stolen the engine one stage, and I lost maybe 30, 40 seconds, even more than that. But from the beginning, I had a big gearbox problem. I think it's our big concern at the moment, and it was very difficult to drive. And then when I was on slicks, I think the front pressure was much too low, and the car was absolutely undrivable. So even if I had not stolen the engine, it would be very difficult for me to win the race in dry condition. Second part of the race. But I'm a bit disappointed because it's not the way I wanted the race going. But I get 4 points, and championship is still very long, and wait and see.
Okay, Ayrton, if we can just come back to you finally now with 12 points in the World Championship lead from a season in which has been started very late for you in terms of decisions. Does this now mean that your continuation with McLaren is assured?
I'll make no comment about that. We've talked so much about this thing, and I don't feel particularly good. I don't see any good things coming out of those discussions to talk in public. All I can tell you is that I don't regret at all what we have done so far under the circumstance. Not the results, but the terms that we have come through. And if I don't race in the future, I will not regret. I feel really light and happy that we made the right things. It was fantastic to all of us. I think it was fantastic for Formula 1 too. And that's all I want to know. I want to enjoy this race just as I did in Brazil after the victory, and I'll think about later on.
Well done to you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So for the 38th time in his career, victory for Ayrton Senna, and a brilliant tactical one. A successive second place for Damon Hill ahead of his teammate Alain Prost. Johnny Herbert equals his best previous position, 4th place. Riccardo Patrese 5th, and Fabrizio Barbazza finishes in the points 6th for the first time. So now Ayrton Senna leads the World Championship by 12 points from his rival Alain Prost, who is only 2 ahead of Damon Hill. Englishman Mark Blundell ties with Englishman Johnny Herbert for 4th place, Michael Schumacher in 6th position. The Constructors' Championship still shared as it was before this race